The first fire bells of dawn rolled across King's Landing like muffled thunder, the great city stirring beneath the pale wash of a winter sky that had forgotten how to snow. In the maze of roof lines and crooked chimneys, a mist of coal smoke drifted low, drawing long gray fingers through the winding alleys of Flea Bottom where sleep was a luxury and hunger the only constant prayer. Between the butcher's shutters and the brewer's vats, thin dogs nosed at midden heaps, scraps of bone clattering on stone to herald another day of scraped-out bowls and broken promises. Yet even misery can keep a rhythm, and this morning the beat of iron on iron rang sharper, louder, echoing from the forge of Tobo Mott where an apprentice labored as though the seven had wound his arm like a clock. Gendry Baratheon, though he bore another name still, stood stripped to the waist beside the roaring heart of the forge, sweat steaming from cords of muscle wrought by years at the hammer. Each downstroke flared the coals to furious white, sparks spitting like fireflies born in anguish before dying on the anvil's lip. He loved the clean finality of it. Rough stock shaped into something true, each blow a confession of intent. A man could say with steel what words never managed: resolve, endurance, refusal. But he felt the city's mood shift as surely as he felt the tremor in hot metal. Outside, voices braided with rumor. Ever since the faith militant had risen, tongues wagged in every gutter. The small folk tasted something on the wind, part fear, part hope, and Gendry found himself listening despite himself, as though the hammer's cadence beat out a message in secret code. It was Sister Yanna who first whispered the word king in his hearing. He doubted she knew what she did. A healer of sorts, she came most mornings for horseshoe nails or mending hooks, paying in loaves left at dawnlight mass. This day her shawl smelled of altar smoke and the chalky incense burned before the marble likeness of the crone. "Blessed be," she murmured, palm pressed to the smut on his brawny forearm. "Have you heard? The High Sparrow calls the faithful to the September of Baelor by sunset. He has a great revelation from the seven themselves." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, joy or terror he could not say. "They say the warrior walks again in mortal flesh." Gendry laughed without humor. "The warrior?" He hefted the half-shaped blade he was drawing out, orange as sunrise. "Tell him I've got work for his hands if he's so keen to walk the world." But even as he quenched the glowing steel, the water roared and hissed like a crowd massing through the streets, and he felt a chill rise over the heat. In the white marble corridors of the Great September, the High Sparrow knelt alone before the statue of the Father. He was old in body, yet the light behind his eyes burned as fiercely as any novice's first true spark of faith. At dawn he had dreamed a dream of wings, not dragon wings golden with conquest, but wings of doves in an iron sky that parted to show a crown of morning fire. From the fire a boy arose, dark of hair, blue of eye, half lost and half found, and the mother's voice rang clear as the smith's bell, naming him Gendry Baratheon, bastard made true. When the sparrow woke, the tears on his cheeks tasted of salt and ash. It was not the royal blood alone that stirred him. He had seen bastards rise and princes tumble, but the certainty that the seven had chosen their champion from the gutter itself, proof that piety could upend every worldly ledger. To refuse was to betray the very root of his ministry. Still, he moved with caution. Faith, like wildfire, must be guided lest it burn the city root and branch. He dispatched silent septas through half-lit streets, sworn to spread the rumor with honeyed restraint. A just king was coming, one who owed no coin to the Iron Bank, no fealty to Lannister gold, no favor to reach roses, but only sacred duty to the seven and their flock. By midday, the words passed in taverns and washhouses, in the salt reek of the fish market and beneath the copper kettles of potshops. King of the faithful, king of the small folk, king of the broken and forgotten. When beggars speak of crowns, the mighty grow anxious, yet they cannot stop their ears. At the Red Keep, Queen Regent Cersei paced the length of Maegor's holdfast like a caged lioness scenting smoke. The raven from Old Town still lay on the map table beside her wine cup, Tyrell wax seal tottering half-split. The message within was brief. Dark wings, dark words indeed. The faith would move at sunset. She felt again the ghost ache of cold chains on her wrists, the jeers of small folk as she walked the silent mile of atonement. Never again, she vowed. Sir Robert Strong waited mute at the door, sworn impossibility in gilded armor. With one gesture she could loose him, yet what beast could he slay when the foe was an idea given wings by scripture? Marjorie Tyrell, for her part, received the same whisper with the smile of a woman who had danced through courts since she could first curtsy. To reign beside Tommen was one thing, to rule a kingdom of hungry mouths was another. If the Sparrow crowned a bastard, the throne would fracture yet again and each shard would cut. She summoned her brother Loras. He came limping still from his wounds, and together they weighed Reach grain against faith fervor. A sword might slice a zealot, but bread might sway his flock. Yet the Reach granaries were a fortnight's ride away, and the Sparrow's sermon would thunder tonight. As dusk bled across the rooftops, a tide of candlelight poured toward the hill of Baelor. From every alley they came, ragpickers and ragged knights alike, widows in threadbare shawls, sellswords with patched sigils, smiths and sailors, washerboys and whores. The September bells tolled sonorous and slow, as though measuring the heartbeat of something vast rousing beneath the city. Door wardens barred the Golden Gate, fearing riot, but the crowd had no mind for plunder. They brought offerings of cracked copper stars, of barley loaves, of tears. Gendry walked among them bare-armed and soot-smudged, urged forward by Sister Yenna's gentle tug. He felt as though he moved inside another man's skin, each step both his own and not. The hush that greeted them within the September's cavernous nave pressed like deep water. High Sparrow ascended the pulpit clad not in cloth of silver but in sackcloth the color of dust. He raised a hand and silence fell, thick and complete. "Children," he began, voice raspy yet resonant. "The seven have spoken." He told of fractured crowns forged in sin, of swords raised for pride, of lords fat on taxes tendered by the poor. He spoke of justice not written in ink but burned into the marrow of creation. And then, soft as snowfall, he said a name, Gendry Waters, son of Robert Baratheon. Born in shadow yet born of the blood that once was kingly. The name rippled through listeners like wind across wheat. Gendry felt 1,000 eyes upon him, saw Sister Yenna lower to her knees, and time slowed to a single, impossible breath. When the faith militant parted ranks, their moon and star breastplates gleaming in candle glow, Gendry stood at their center, bewildered, hammer still clutched in calloused fist. The Sparrow's bony hand alighted on his broad shoulder. "In you," the Septon intoned, "the warrior is made flesh, the smith ennobled, the father shown merciful. Will you take this burden? Not to wield power for pride or coin, but to guard the meek and mend the world." Gendry's mouth was dry as old leather. He searched for anger, for laughter, for any anchor to the life he had known, and found only the trembling weight of expectation. Before he could find words, the congregation knelt as one. Torches dipped, their flames like a field of bent wheat beneath a sudden gale. Some wept openly, others prayed in hoarse whispers. To refuse felt equal to slaying hope itself. He thought of days hammering steel no lord would ever wield, of nights sleeping on a straw tick beside the forge hearth while gold-clad knights snored in featherbeds. If the seven truly chose him, perhaps a world might rise where no boy was beaten for stealing crusts, no girl sold for a pouch of silver stags. A dream, perhaps, but dreamers had toppled tyrants before. He knelt. A sigh gusted through the sept like spring wind stirring banners. The High Sparrow produced a circlet rod of battered iron chased with 7 tiny crystals. Father, mother, warrior, maiden, smith, crone, stranger, each cut crude yet hardy. No gold, no jewels save sacrifice. He lifted it high. For an instant Gendry saw his own reflection in the facets. A smith's son, a king's son, a boy turned man turned vessel of prophecy. When the crown touched his brow, he thought he heard an anvil sing. A swell of voices rose, not cheers but hymns. Ancient verses seldom heard beyond small septs of country hamlets, psalms of harvest and hearth, battle and blessing. The music filled the nave and vaulted through mosaic domes until even the marble gods seemed to lean in wonder. Gendry half expected thunderbolts, dragon fire, or Lannister crossbowman. Instead, he felt only warmth spreading from the small, rough crown into his skull, down spine and limb, until his fingers tingled with restless promise. Outside, a hush fell over the throngs as the bronze doors groaned wide. Lantern light spilled upon cobbles slick with lantern oil, and Gendry emerged flanked by sparrows bearing cudgels carved as shepherd's crooks. He walked with measured tread, dazed yet drawn onward by unseen gravity. Someone began to chant, "Baratheon." Another answered, "Faithful King." Soon the names wove together in steady cadence, hearts beating time. He passed barefoot beggars and Sellsword captains alike, each reaching to brush his sleeve as though his sweat were holy water. He saw in their eyes reflection of a future unimagined. Not thrones gilded by conquest, but church steps swept clean of bones. Hope can be a blade sharper than Valyrian steel, and once unsheathed it cuts both ways. Across the city, bells tolled alarm from the Tower of the Hand. Cersei's crimson guards flooded Torch Alley, shields braced, for rumors breed chaos faster than wildfire. Maesters scribbled furiously, ravens prepared to fly to Riverrun, Highgarden, Sunspear. In the small council chamber, Grand Maester Pycelle spluttered that bastard blood meant treason, while Qyburn's smile flickered thin and thoughtful. Only Jaime, leaning on the carved windowsill, watched the distant candle sea and wondered if a sword could sever faith itself. By midnight, the faith militant escorted Gendry to the old September stable yard, its slates still blackened from the last dance of dragons. There they found him garments plain yet clean, homespun tunic of deep stag brown, leggings the color of forge smoke, boots newly cobbled by apprentices who bowed lower than royalty. On his chest they affixed a brooch of hammered iron shaped into a kneeling kneeler, symbol of humble service. No crown melted of Baratheon gold, no stag rampant on black. When he asked what sigil he was to bear, the Sparrow replied, "You are the anvil. Let the world decide what weapon is forged upon you." Sleep that night stole him in fits. Dreams came hot and bright, his hammer striking not steel but stone, sparks flaring into constellations across black sky, each star a soul crying for justice. Then the forge dimmed and he walked alone through the wreckage of red banners and green, past dead kings and broken sparrow staves. At the far end stood a lone stag of white flame, and as he reached to touch its antlers it burst skyward, shattering into 7 shards of light that rained upon the earth like seeds. He woke at dawn trembling, the scent of soot still in his nostrils. The city woke too, jittery as a colt sensing storm. In taverns, toasts clashed with curses. Some hailed the faith's wisdom, others spat that bastards make bastard kingdoms. Gold cloaks doubled their patrols, yet found more kneeling supplicants than pickpockets. At midday, the Sparrow announced a coronation mass to be held before the bones of Baelor the Blessed, 3 days hence, granting 3 days for the lords of the realm to bend the knee or bare their throats. Ravens flew swift as dread itself. In Storm's End, young Edric Storm read the raven's parchment twice, thrice, and laughed until his maester feared a fit. "Another bastard crowned," he said. "Perhaps the gods are finally honest." In the Eyrie, Sweet Robin asked whether bastard kings made better toys. In Dorne, Prince Doran's cup trembled as he considered the coin now minted with faith on one side and bastard blood upon the other. Every move in the game tasted of ash these days, yet he could not ignore the sound of sparrow hymns reaching even Sunspear's salt-slicked walls. Meanwhile, Gendry spent dawn hours at the forge, refusing soft beds and perfumed baths prepared by novitiates. The High Sparrow granted him space. Humility was best preached by axe, not parchment. Gendry heated scrap iron until white, then struck and folded, working wordlessly. The faith militant watched curious, expecting a sword, but when he quenched the final shape it was only a broad carpenter's hammer, polished but plain. He bound the haft in leather and laid it across the altar of the smith without ceremony. "Let those who would build," he said, "find tools here. Let those who would break find nothing." The words spread like embers on wind. On the second day, a delegation arrived from the Red Keep. Ser Kevin Lannister, acting hand, robed in sober gray, Mace Tyrell in golden velvet blooming with roses, Grand Maester Pycelle wheezing through scented pomander. They were met in the Sept's antechamber by the High Sparrow, who permitted no retinue of guards. Kevin demanded audience with the so-called bastard king. The Sparrow declined. "The king serves, not struts," he said, "and he serves the people now." When Mace protested that the Iron Throne alone could name kings, the Sparrow merely raised one brow. "And who named the throne, my lord? The smith, the stonemason, or the sword that guarded its forging?" Pycelle quailed behind his sleeves, muttering of precedents. They left bruised by words sharper than any steel. That night, whispers claimed the queen would move against the Sparrow at dawn, that wildfire caches lay primed beneath September foundations. Gendry walked the nave, fingers brushing cold marble pillars, and wondered how many must die when faith and fear collide. He recalled Thuras of Mir's Redfire sermons, the Brotherhood's ragged justice, the endless churn of banners new and old. If he were king in truth, could he end it? He knelt before the stranger's shadow and begged for path unseen. Twilight of the third day brought rain, soft at first, then driving sheets that drummed on slate like throngs at a gate. Still they came, tens of thousands braving mud and chill, candles guttering yet unextinguished. The air smelled of wet wool and wet hope. Cersei watched from Maegor's holdfast window, goblet clenched so tightly her knuckles blanched. No wildfire caches lay beneath the September. Tyrion had seen to their removal during the siege. Her power was coin and cunning, but neither bought lightning to strike a prophet. Within the September, Gendry stood before Baelor's alabaster tomb, shorn now of forged soot, hair tied at the nape by a strip of linen. His crown rested on the altar. High Sparrow raised a vessel of sanctified oil, blessing each of the 7 aspects before anointing his brow. A hush fell so deep that even the rain seemed to pause. "Gendry of House Baratheon," the Sparrow proclaimed, "King of the faithful, protector of the poor, hammer of the 7. Rise and serve." He rose. When the doors opened, a roar met them, ragged voices woven into one great chord. Gendry stepped through rain into a sea of uplifted faces streaked by candle wax and tears. He lifted not his hammer but his empty hands. In that moment, thunder rumbled over Blackwater Bay, and lightning forked behind the red keep's jagged silhouettes, etching the silhouette of a stag crowned by storm. Some swore later they saw a rainbow light dance upon the September's dome despite the gray. The hours that followed blurred. Oaths sworn by barefoot cobblers and gray-haired fishermen, bread broken at makeshift trestles, a crippled boy held aloft to brush Gendry's knee. He spoke little, for words weighed heavy. Instead he listened, hammering their stories into the memory of muscle like new steel to be forged in days ahead. But somewhere beyond the glow of torches, darker matters stirred. Across the city, gold and crimson banners gathered. In Riverrun, Tully outriders questioned loyalties. In the north, ravens flew to Winterfell where a boy Lord Wade's Sparrow verses against northern gods of leaf and stone. Even in the far islands of the Arbor, sailors sang of a Hammer King who would shatter all chains, and certain captains pondered new alliances. 3 days after his coronation, Gendry stood atop the September steps at sunrise, rain-washed air shimmering with bell peals. He addressed the milling crowd. "I am no lord hatched of intrigue, no conqueror trailed by dragons," he said, voice carrying like forge song. "I am the small folk's son, and every blow of my hammer was born from hunger and want. So shall my reign be, a reign of building. Let the hungry eat, the naked find cloth, the maimed find healing. Let the high learn humility, and the cruel learn fear." At that, the faith militant struck their staffs once, the sound like the crack of doom or dawn. Far below the steps, a girl in tattered blue smiled beneath her hood. Her name was Arya once, though no longer. In the crowd's swell, no one saw the blade she carried for another purpose. Fate, like steel, may be forged anew in hotter fires, and the Game of Thrones was reshuffled on this rain-slick morning. Across the city, Cersei Lannister donned black velvet and called her banners. For when faith crowns one king, another must bleed. Thus the storm-forged reign of Gendry Baratheon, king of the faithful, began not with trumpet or tourney, but with a hammer laid at the foot of an altar, and a question hammered into the heart of every soul. What is a crown, if not a promise made flesh? The promise hung unanswered over King's Landing, poised like a smith's hammer above anvil, awaiting the next stroke. The bells of the Great September had scarcely fallen silent when the city awoke to the thunder of hooves and the squeal of wagon wheels. Flea Bottom's narrow veins clogged with pilgrims who refused to scatter even when dawn's drizzle thickened into iron-cold rain. They camped beneath awnings of patched sailcloth, huddled in door crevices, roasting onions over gutter fires that hissed and spat. 3 days after the coronation, King's Landing no longer smelled primarily of midden and horse dung but of damp wool, candle tallow, and the sour tang of bodies pressed together without sleep. Somewhere in that press was a heartbeat the gold cloaks could not still, a collective thrum of anticipation, as if each man, woman, and barefoot child had dreamed the same dream, of hammers ringing against injustice, of bread baskets overflowing. Gendry Baratheon, newly crowned yet still unsure how a crown should sit upon a brow hardened by furnace heat, passed those camps obscured by a plain hood. The Sparrow insisted on humility, but the hood served another purpose. He could listen unseen, overhear the grocer swearing that this king smells of honest sweat, or the washerwoman murmuring that she would name her child Gendry if the babe inside proved a boy. Every word landed like a hot rivet in his chest, equal parts pride and terror. He had wielded a hammer against iron countless MES. Never had he forged his own name. He reached the iron gate before dawn, where the faith militant maintained a vigil of prayer instead of Pike's old septa liane, blind since the spring rains of Ares last year, sat upon a stool and chanted the mother's hymn until her cracked voice dissolved. She had come from salt pans, walking the river road barefoot, to hear a bastard speak justice. When the hooded king knelt and pressed a steaming loaf of barley bread into her palms, the septa's ruined eyes filled with milky tears. "Bless you, child," she whispered, not knowing his face. "May your crown never weigh heavier than your heart." Gendry answered simply, "Pray it so," before melting back into rain-gray alleyways. Within Maegor's holdfast, Cersei Lannister convened her own kind of prayer meeting, of steel, schemes, and scorn. Torches hissed as she paced the small council chamber, the train of her morning black whispering against polished stone. Kevin sat rigid at the table's end, fingers steepled. Qyburn shadowed the hearth, feeding it slender wisps of parchment. Ser Meryn Trant tugged at his gilded gorget, uneasy without the clamor of armored ranks behind him. "The faith has outplayed us," Kevin admitted at length, his graying beard wagging with each clipped word. "The city has poured its last crumbs of hope into that bastard's empty hands. To strike him down now invites martyrdom." Cersei's lips curled. "Let the mob canonize another corpse," she said. "I have no interest in Sparrow saints, only in crowns. Tommen's crown." She tapped the table where the three-headed dragon of Aegon the Conqueror lay etched beneath fresh scratches. "Yet every chant of faithful king chips at his authority. I will not stand idle while my son's throne is gnawed to tinder." Qyburn cleared his throat with oily politeness. "There are quieter means than wildfire, your grace. A barrel of Cersei's sunshine would scorch half the city. And we both know what happened to the last queen who birthed a conflagration in Baelor's shadow." At that memory they all glanced, unbidden, toward the western horizon where the ruins of the September of Baelor the Blessed would forever haunt stone with unseen ashes. Cersei's voice sharpened. "Then give me a quieter blade." "A knife in a pulpit is loud," Kevin warned. "The Sparrow has eyes in every alley, ears in every tavern, and hearts, 7 save us, in every slum. Better to unravel him with his own threads." He turned to the piles of reports arriving by Raven each dawn. Grain caravans delayed on the Rose Road, Tyrell soldiers denied entry at the Lion Gate, Riotun nobles in the Stormlands pledging coin and men in letters sealed with hammers. "We choke him with supply lines," Kevin said. "The bastard promises bread? We buy the granaries and lock their doors. The Sparrow promises peace? We let bandits, our bandits..." roam unchecked beyond the city, pressing small folk back into the keep's orbit where Lannister gold feeds mouths. Cersei considered her uncle's counsel, amber wine catching torchlight in her goblet. "Let the people starve before they kneel elsewhere," she whispered. Then louder, "Do it." Kevin accepted the decree with a nod, though doubt pinched his eyes. He remembered Tywin's lessons on siegecraft, yet also the riot that once tore through these same streets when Joffrey had withheld food. As the council dispersed, Qyburn lingered to present the Queen Regent with a small pewter box. "Your Grace asked for quieter blades," he said. "This one need not draw a drop of blood." Inside nestled a spider no larger than a fingernail, its carapace shimmering violet in torchlight. Essos breeds marvels and horrors in equal measure. A single sting delivers 7 beats of the heart before stillness. Cersei studied the creature, fascination flickering in green-gold eyes. "Better still," she breathed. "Let the faith see divine justice when their Smith King keels over mid-sermon." She snapped the lid shut. "Find a hand to carry this sting." Elsewhere, in a damp cellar beneath Cobbler Square, the Brotherhood without banners met by candle stub to debate the fate of kings. Angui the archer fletched new arrows while Lem Lemoncloak growled that the Brotherhood's cause was the small folks. "If that smith truly means to mend broken cartwheels and fill bellies," Lem said, "then let us stand beside him." Thuras of Myr, wine-stained and sorrow-eyed, cautioned patience. "Kings rise and fall like autumn leaves," he muttered, flicking ash from his beard. "The last Baratheons we followed left graves from Blackwater waterfront to the Trident's mouth. I will not bind my faith to another stag unless he proves more than antlers and good intentions." But Lady Stoneheart, silent still as the grave from which she'd crawled, raised one gray hand. Her throat could shape no words, yet her gaze burned with a vengeance older than crowns. She pointed at Gendry's crude sigil, a hammer over 7-pointed star, scratched upon the cellar wall by a hopeful child. Then she pointed to her own throat, stitched flesh puckering beneath coarse scarf. The message was clear: faith can birth miracles or hang men. She would watch, weigh, and choose whom to hang. Beyond the city's foul gates, ravens winged through storm-braided sky. At storm's end, Edric Storm felt the rain's drum upon the drum tower and wondered if it beat war's cadence. He had grown tall for his 14 years, with Robert's grin and none of his appetites, yet he knew kinship when he heard it. Gendry Waters, a brother by blood and now a king by faith. Edric's maester urged caution, but young Storm called banners of minor houses long loyal to the stag. Buckler, Morrigan, Swan. Let the Lannisters contest the crown one bastard war. Another would see it kept honest. In the Reach, Olenna Tyrell's quills tore across parchment at uncharacteristic speed, dispatching secret notes to Tarleys and Hightowers alike. Roses thrived in sunlight, yet shadows lengthened from kings landing across fertile fields. Let the faith starve the city? She scoffed. Marjorie's own crown perched upon Tommen's curls, but a kingdom ravaged by zealotry left no garden to bloom. Alliances must be pruned before thorns drew too much blood. Meanwhile, the High Sparrow threaded quiet corridors of the Great September, sandals whispering over mosaics worn by millions of pilgrim feet. He paused before the stranger's statue, shrouded in perpetual shadow. "Guide him," he prayed, meaning Gendry. "Guide us all." For though his dream of a champion chosen from gutter clay had come true, even he felt the tremor inside that dream. A note too pure, too bright, threatening to crack the world's brittle shell. Gendry himself seldom entered the royal apartments prepared for him. Instead, he lodged in the September scriptorium, where novices copied faithful texts by sputtering lamplight. He took to reading saints' lives until dawn. Baelor the Blessed, Queen Nymeria's conversion, good Queen Alysanne who gave bread to lepers beyond the wall. Their piety carved a hollow inside him where once anger burned. Could he fill it with deed, or would the emptiness devour his resolve? At dawn on the 7th day of his reign, he called a council not of lords but of tradesmen. Potter, cooper, baker, mason, midwife, charcoal burner, each given equal place upon benches of simple pine. High above, Stained glass warrior glowed red gold as the sun climbed. "Tell me needs," Gendry bade them, and they told. Roofs leaking in Fishmonger's Row, canals fouled by dead dogs, a shortage of coarse flour ever since the Tyrell wagons were detained outside the Lion Gate. "The city starves by decree," the baker said, kneading dough that was more sawdust than wheat. "They mean to make the faith taste ashes." Gendry's knuckles whitened. "Then we find grain beyond their reach," he vowed. "Riverland's farms still stand, though war-scarred. We'll buy their surplus with work, not coin. Send masons to rebuild mills, midwives to tend their wounded. Fair trade, not extortion." The cooper laughed incredulously. "A king who pays in sweat? The lords will spit." "Let them drown," Gendry answered, "in the sluice of their own greed." That afternoon he strode to the stables built against the September's western wall and ordered mounts saddled. 20 sparrows in half-rusted mail volunteered to ride with him to the Riverlands. 20,000 small folk volunteered to follow if asked, but provisions were scarce enough. When Sister Yanna begged to attend, he refused gently. "The city needs healers more than distant farms." He pressed into her hand the carpenter's hammer he'd forged, symbol of building. "Hold this at the clinics. Let each wound you mend echo like a bell across doubt." Word of the coming exodus reached the Red Keep at dusk. Cersei smiled thinly to imagine the bastard riding beyond her claws. Yet Qyburn reminded her that steel roads ran both directions. "An arrow loosed outside city walls draws less notice than a dagger drawn inside," he said. She dispatched a trio of sellswords, disavowed in gold cloaks but loyal to heavier purses, to follow and strike. One carried the pewter box. Night fell black as bruises. In the scriptorium, novice brother Halmar dipped quill to ink when a shape flickered behind him. He turned, expecting the king come late to borrow more scrolls. Instead, a girl stepped forward, face half hidden by travel-stained hood. "Needlework?" she asked, though no seamstress could fit such irony in so soft a word. Before Halmar could answer, a flash of steel glinted, a slender blade no thicker than a quill. She slid it beneath his chin. "Quiet," she urged. "I only want parchment." Arya, though that name was buried beneath many, had returned to King's Landing not for crowns but for names. Cersei, Island Payne, Meryn Trant. Yet the city's noise now sang a different verse. A bastard smith crowned by piety, banners of hammers where once lions roared. She slipped among Sparrow ranks like a spark among tinder, unseen yet dangerous. In the scriptorium she filched ink, blank scroll, and a single candle stub. Words, she reckoned, could wound sooner than blades if cast sharp enough. She wrote in a cramped hand, "The Queen Regent means death. Trust no gift from crimson hands." Then she sealed it with melted tallow and slipped the scroll into a pouch meant for Sister Yanna's clinic supplies. "Let the faithful carry warning faster than ravens." Arya sheathed her blade named Needle and vanished into corridors where sandstone pillars wore shadows like cloaks. She had other names to cross tonight. Gendry's convoy departed through the mud gate at first gray light. The city walls' crenellations dripped rainwater onto their heads as they passed. Children perched atop barrels to wave. Old men lifted trembling fingers in blessing. The king of the faithful rode a rangy bay mare, no barred warhorse, and wore a smith's leather apron over quilted jerkin. The crown of battered iron hid beneath his hood. He would not brandish cymbals while mouths went hungry. They took the Rose Road at a steady trot, slogging past stalled Tyrell wagons blocked by gold cloak checkpoints. Mules bawled, drivers cursed, and crates of grain rotted beneath tarps while guards demanded tariffs none could pay. Gendry dismounted. "This grain belongs in bellies," he told the sergeant, a Lannister man-at-arms with greasy curls under half-helm. "Not warehouses." The sergeant considered the 20 sparrows behind him, half-starved zealots armed with cudgels and faith. He sneered but offered token courtesy. "Orders, sire. The Queen Regent has no claim to bread she did not sow," Gendry interrupted. Moments later, his hammer smashed the seal on the lead wagon's rear door. Sacks of oats tumbled onto the muddy verge. Sparrow hands moved quick, distributing cloth bundles to mothers with thin-armed babes and old soldiers missing teeth. A cheer rose, and with it the hammer chant, "Baratheon, faithful king." When a gold cloak raised his spear in protest, Gendry caught the shaft in one calloused fist and bent it near double. The man backed away, cheeks blanching. "Tell your captain," Gendry said, returning the crooked spear. "The warrior protects those who cannot wield steel." Behind a curtain slit in the rearmost wagon, one Sellsword watched with cold eyes. He noted the bend of Gendry's arm, the reach of Sparrow ranks, the ease with which the newly crowned king moved among commoners. He also felt the pewter box in his satchel, weight slight as gilt, and considered. Night would fall eventually, and kings slept somewhere. Back in King's Landing, hunger clawed where faith tried to comfort. Sister Yanna's clinic overflowed. She triaged fevers, set splints, spooned onion broth into lips cracked by starvation. At dusk, the pouch left by a novice arrived. Inside lay the scroll Arya had penned. Yanna read the warning once, twice, then hid it beneath her mat. Even suspicion was dangerous. She vowed to speak with the Sparrow at next Vespers. But the Sparrow had left his cell for Maester's Hill, where he met silently with brother Reynold, once a mason of fair renown. Together they unfurled city plans showing forgotten cisterns beneath the streets, caverns large enough to store grain safe from Lannister confiscation. By week's end, Reynold pledged, we'll have channels cleared and stones reinforced, bread for winter if we can fill them. What the Sparrow dared not voice was the fear that winter's bite already scraped bone, and empty cisterns were coffins waiting to be filled with hopes. On the ridge above Blackwater Rush, tents sprouted like a rusty field. Mercenaries from Lys, Pentoshi traders, 2 cohorts of Stormlanders under Edric Storm's Stag and Sun banner. They came not to besiege but to watch. Rumor claimed the Hammer King would return with Riverland's wheat and an army of mended men, whose loyalty was bought not with coin but with kindness. Some Sellsword captains scoffed. Steel followed gold, but others remembered banners shattered at Blackwater, commanders who swaggered then perished. Loyalty given freely might yet surpass fear. On the Rose Road, the convoy pressed north, skirting villages burnt by the War of the Five Kings. In one such ruin, a charred stump of a sept, its bell melted into a shapeless lump, Gendry paused. He knelt amid ash where once pews stood, fingers sifting through debris until they found a half-fused candlestick. He weighed it, turned it, and finally drove it upright into the earth like a marker for lost souls. "We rebuild," he told his companions, voice hoarse from road dust. "Stone by stone, board by board. The crown means nothing unless it sets hands to work." That night they camped beside the Mander tributary. Moonlight silvered the current. Frogs chirped oblivious to treason whispered on its banks. Squires gathered driftwood for fires. Sparrow sentries patrolled. Gendry walked beyond the glow to stand at water's edge. He thought of the forge's hush between hammer strikes, how stillness holds potential. Now the hush around him carried menace. He felt watched. From reeds behind, the first Sellsword loosed a quarrel. The shaft sliced air where his neck had been, embedding in willow trunk with a thunk that mimicked a smith's mallet. Gendry rolled, sand scraping his cheek, as sparrows cried alarm. 2 more shadows leaped from brush, short swords glinting. He seized a fallen branch, heavy, knotted, suited for clubs, and met them head-on. The first assailant thrust low. Gendry parried with the branches but, splintering point aside, he swung crosswise, branch cracking ribs with hollow crunch. The second stabbed underarm. Gendry pivoted, felt steel-kiss leather apron but glance off the belt buckle beneath. He rammed his shoulder into the man's chest, both tumbling into water chest-deep and frigid. River mud sucked at boots. Sword point flickered. Gendry caught the blade barehanded once, twice, knuckles tearing, then wrenched it free and flung it downstream. The first Sellsword, ribs shattered, groaned upon sand. The second slogged toward shore, cursing, fists empty. Gendry followed, chest heaving. Moonlight revealed a pewter box slung from the man's belt by leather thong. Recognition flashed. Gendry recalled Sister Yenna's fears, rumors of poison. He snatched the box, snapped its latch. The violet spider within skittered across his palm. Without hesitation, he hurled box and spider alike into the river. They vanished beneath black current. Sparrows reached him then, cudgels bloody, prisoners bound. The third sellsword, crossbowman, bled from temple where a slingstone struck. Gendry wiped river water from his face. "Bind his wounds," he ordered. "We will learn who sent him, then set choice before him, work for bread or rot." He touched torn knuckles, warm blood seeping. "The warrior tests our mettle tonight." By dawn, the surviving sellsword confessed between fevered breaths. A queen regent's coin, a Qyburn's plan, a spider's sting. Gendry listened, silent as iron cooling. He let the man drink, then ordered his shackles replaced by rope reins at a wagon's tongue. "You'll pull with the oxen until debt's repaid," he said. "Betray me again and the stranger collects." The sellsword wept. From relief or horror, none knew. The caravan rolled onward. Word of the attempt bounded ahead like wildfire across dry leaves. When they reached Maidenpool, townsfolk thronged the gate, waving salted fish and turnips in welcome. Lord Mutun, who once flung open gates to Stannis and later to Lannister gold, now knelt in muddy courtyard. "Your Grace," he said, voice trembling, "half our harvest for your granaries, half our swords for your banner, if you swear to keep Maidenpool safe from pillage." Gendry raised the lord, shook calloused hand with jeweled. "No tithes," he answered. "We trade. Granary stones for grain, bridges for swords." He turned to his masons. "Begin at dawn." The hammer chant followed him into Mutun halls lighted for feast. Yet he ate little, mind turning upon murders unmade, upon a queen regent whose next blow would not miss. In King's Landing, Cersei raged when the sellswords' heads arrived not as trophies but as prisoners marched into the September courtyard to beg forgiveness. She shattered Qyburn's pewter box against chamber wall. "7 heartbeats," she hissed. "He should be dead." Qyburn dared a placating smile. "Faith breeds miracles, it seems." "Faith breeds fools," she spat. "But fools can drown kingdoms." She whirled on Ser Robert Strong. "Ready, my champion." That night, while Strong's silent armor was polished to mirror finish, the High Sparrow received Sister Yenna's warning scroll. He read the cramped script by candle glow, then fed it to flame. His shoulders sagged. Perhaps he was older than his bones. He prayed long in the Mother's Chapel, asking pity for Cersei, for Gendry, for every soul chained by fear. The next dawn he climbed the pulpit and addressed thousands. "Evil strikes unseen, yet we answer not with spears, but with steadfastness. When stones are cast, we build temples from rubble." He declared a day of forgiveness. Any gold cloak, sellsword, or Lannister bannerman who laid arms at the September steps by sunset would be absolved and welcomed into the faith's service. Some jeered, some wept, some simply walked away, grappling with conscience newly awakened. Arya watched from high beam, cloaked in dust, considering how many heads might be spared if words cut deep enough. She slipped into the city's veins once more. Her list still whispered, but the shape of the realm shifted beneath her feet like ice cracking on river. Perhaps the new king deserved his chance to mend broken things before she dismantled old wrongs with death. Gendry remained in Maidenpool 10 days, raising hammer not as symbol be. Ut tool. He helped hoist beams into place, his crown tucked beneath tunic. Children giggled to see a king strain on pulley rope. He laughed with them, feeling, for the first time since coronation, almost himself. But ravens flew. Reports of Lannister patrols gathering near Duskendale reached him. Rumors of Ironborn raids on Cape Wrath, emboldened by royal distraction. He could not build one town while kingdoms burned. On the 11th dawn, he summoned his companions. "We ride south," he announced. "King's Landing must see grain wagons roll through her gates. The city starves under Lannister embargo. If we fail, faith dies of hunger." He left a garrison of 50 volunteers in Maidenpool, stonecutters sworn to complete mill repairs, and pressed onward with 300 Riverlanders newly sworn. Rain slackened. Autumn's first crisp mornings hinted at frost to come. Along roadsides, small altars sprouted. Little hammers carved from driftwood, 7-pointed stars painted crude on bellies of clay jars. Once, a knight of House Langward blocked the road, demanding toll for passage. Gendry removed his crown, showed calloused palms, and asked what toll the land demanded from a starving mother to feed her babe. The knight's retinue lowered lances. That night, the Langwards broke bread with sparrows around shared fire, and by morning 3 of their number rode with the Hammer King. But not all hearts melted so quick. Outside Duskendale, a Lannister detachment massed, red cloaks wet with dew. Ser Balon Swan, once of the Kingsguard, commanded 300 men-at-arms, 2 scorpions, and orders signed by Kevin himself. Turn back the bastard or drag him in irons to the Red Keep. Swan remembered Gendry faintly, a lad in gold cloaks escorting Tommen after Blackwater, but duty seldom heeds memory. They met at dawn in an open field spiked by dead cornstalks. Mist clung knee-high. Gendry rode forward alone, unhelmed, cloak a poor man's wool. Behind him, sparrows hummed hymns. Riverlanders hefted salvaged spears. Swan hailed him with formal courtesy. "Your grace, if reports be true, state your purpose." "To feed a city," Gendry replied. "Stand aside or stand with." Swan's jaw tightened. "My loyalty is sworn to the crown that resides in the Red Keep, and mine to crowns buried in bellies," Gendry said. Then, raising voice, "Men of Casterly Rock, the 7 aspects gaze upon us. Which face do you see when you close your eyes at night? The warrior who defends the weak, or the craven who hides behind gilded lions while children perish?" Murmurs rippled through Lannister lines. Hunger had touched their households too. Quartermasters rationed grain even for men-at-arms. The sight of wagons heavy with Riverland's wheat stirred a pang deeper than fear of discipline. Swan sensed the waver. "Hold ranks," he barked, spurring forward. Yet he advanced alone. No line followed. Gendry dismounted, strode across damp soil until they stood swords reach apart. "Ride with us," he said, voice low. "I'll kneel before your queen when every mouth in the city is fed. Until then, break no oath the 7 will judge." Swan's gaze dipped to Gendry's belt. No sword, only that carpenter's hammer hanging simple. He sheathed his own blade. "Withdraw," he murmured. "I cannot unswear loyalty, but nor will I see blood spilt here." He turned his horse, ordered his men to clear the road. They parted, some saluting with spears reversed. That evening, grain wagons rolled unmolested toward King's Landing. Word outran them. By the time the convoy reached the mud gate, small folk lined the walls chanting, "The hammer strikes bread." Within the Red Keep, Cersei smashed a decanter of Arbor Red against her map table, wine bleeding over the painted neck. Tommen, white-faced, asked why Mother disliked bread for the hungry. She knelt, stroking his hair, deceit sweet as honey. "Because false kings steal from true hearts, my love, they will steal from you too." Yet even Kevin now questioned strategy. "Starvation breeds revolt," he warned the council. "If we continue to pinch the grain flow, we risk the city rising. Better to outshine the faith with our own charity." Cersei's laugh cracked like a whip. "Charity from empty coffers? The Reach withholds coin, the Iron Bank calls debts, and sparrows pluck silver from pilgrim purses. We hold only fear. Fear will suffice." Across the bay, Davos Seaworth's ship Black Betha skimmed toward the capital under black sail. He bore letters from Stannis, dead these 2 years yet still haunting loyalists, and from Princess Shireen who now fostered at White Harbor. But Davos came on his own mission, to see if a bastard smith truly wore a crown of rust. He believed in few miracles, yet he had escorted Gendry once from Dragonstone's dungeons, and owed the boy man now more than he could repay. Wind-filled canvas. Torches of the harbor twinkled like embers on dark water. Davos thought of smugglers' nights, onions under siege. If faith could crown a king, perhaps onions might feed one. The black bethas hold brimmed with sacks of hard white bulbs, hardy for winter storage. A humble cargo, but onions had saved Storm's End once, and might again save King's Landing from itself. As the ship angled toward the quay, a hooded watcher slipped from shadow, foxy smile hidden beneath ragged beard, and vanished into labyrinthine docks. Varys, spider of whispers, had returned from exile with secrets tastier than any onion. He fluttered from cobblestone to corridor, scattering words like seeds. A smith crowned, a queen cornered, a realm ripe for fires set by unseen hands. Inside the great September, Gendry knelt before oaken map table newly built by brother Reynauld. On it lay polished stones carved with sigils of every house. Lions, roses, krakens, dire wolves. Alongside plain iron pegs representing the faithful's new host. He placed a stag peg at King's Landing, a loaf-carved token at each granary cistern. The city's veins began to fill with bread again. But he saw how thin his lines stretched, how wide the storm of Cersei's rage might spread. The High Sparrow entered, footsteps soft. "The mother smiles upon your return," he said. "If she smiles, it is because children ate tonight," Gendry answered, shoulders sagging with travel's weight. But smiles fade. Lannister gold buys blades sharper than hunger. The Sparrow laid a parchment before him, a letter bearing the wax of Dorne's son and spear. Prince Doran expressed willingness to mediate talks between Crown and Faith to avert bloodbath. He offered grain shipments from the Red Mountains on condition their safe passage through Stormlands. Doran, ever careful, saw dawn of opportunity. Gendry touched the seal. "We need allies, not more ravens." "Words first," the Sparrow cautioned. "Blood last." That night, candles burned low in the September when Sister Yanna found Gendry forging again. He hammered a length of cheap pig iron, no masterpiece, just nails. Hundreds of them, each stroke echoing. "Why nails?" she asked. "Because the city needs roofs fixed before snow," he answered. Sweat gleamed upon his brow where the crown would sit. She saw scabs on his knuckles, river mud still caked around boots. In that moment, the trappings of royalty seemed ill-fitting on a man who fashioned salvation one nail at a time. She placed a wet cloth across his shoulders, smiled. "The mother treats wounds by small stitches," she said. "Your nails will patch more than roofs." From the gallery above, Arya watched unseen, needle-slender silhouette against forge fire glare. She felt something twist beneath ribs, the stubborn flutter of hope she had once buried alongside child's laughter. Kings and queens spilled blood. She'd sworn to cut their throats in turn. But a king who hammered nails and fed children? She slipped her kill list from sleeve, stared at Cersei's name. Perhaps the game of faces now offered a different play. Outside the city, thunderheads rolled from the west, lightning forks limning jagged clouds. Storm's End banners billowed along Blackwater banks. Tyrell scouts watched from across fields of corpses, still unburied from wars past. Ironborn longships prowled the coast, sniffing carrion on the wind. Across every holdfast, tongues wagged. A bastard wears a crown. A queen sharpens daggers. A realm trembles on anvil, and the hammer is raised. Gendry stood atop the September's domed roof the next dawn. Sunrise bleeding gold over river and rampart. Below, his people stirred. Bakers stoking ovens, masons stacking stone, children laughing around water barrels full for once. He tightened the leather tie on his hood. The crown peaked darkly where it pressed the hood's cloth. He lifted his hammer and let it rest across his shoulders. One breath, deep as furnaces. In the coming days he would parley with Dornish envoys, strike bargains with onion knights, face Cersei's wrath and trials by champion or perhaps open war. Yet standing on stone wet with dawn, he remembered a bent spear, a loaf offered to blind Septa, a river washing blood from torn fists. If the Seven had chosen him, perhaps they did so not to rule but to build. He would build until nails ran out, until hammers split, until crown rusted away, and even then he would beat iron upon iron until only the echo remained, a promise ringing across the ages, that every blow struck for the meek resounds louder than trumpets of conquest. Far below, A single bell began to toll, slow and measured, calling the faithful to prayer, calling a kingdom to reckon with itself. Crows flew from the ruins of Maegor's holdfast, startled into gray flurry. The wind carried their cries northward, toward snow-capped mountains where wolf banners snapped, and southward across jade-bright sea where dragons yet dreamed in old Valyria's smoke. Everywhere, a hammer's reverberation traveled through the bones of Westeros, pounding at the locked doors of destiny. And destinies, like steel, bend beneath relentless strike, if the hand that wields the hammer holds fast. The rain came again at midnight, thin at first, like dust shaken from a moth-eaten tapestry, then heavier until every roof in King's Landing drummed the same muffled march. Beneath sagging awnings in Cobbler's Square, the small folk dreamed of hot bread and dry straw while rivulets crept between cobblestones and gathered in turbid puddles. Here and there a gutter clogged, spewing a gray tongue that curled around half-crumbled steps before vanishing down a sewer grate older than Aegon's Landing. The city smelled of wet ash, tallow, and dung, a fetid brew that Gendry Baratheon had known all his life and could track now even through windows of the king's solar the faith had prepared for him. He did not sleep. Instead he worked a hand-crank whetstone set upon an oak block, feeding its hungry will a rusted woodsman's axe he had found in the hay of a stable west of the September. The thing had pitted edges, a cracked haft, but when sparks leapt from its biting rim he felt something cleanse inside him, a private sacrament of steel. Each hiss of water on stone carried him back to Tobo Mott's forge, before crowns and councils. The whetstone stopped. He lifted the blade to the lantern, turning it so light skimmed the edge. Sharp enough to sever rope or burden, he thought. A knock. He laid axe aside, wiped palms on leather apron, and bade entry. Davos Seaworth stepped in, rain-beaded cloak clinging to sea-salted beard. His lantern cast halos around droplets on the rushes. "Your Grace," Davos said, half smiling. "Never figured I'd greet you with that word on my tongue." "Nor I," Gendry answered, voice rough from whetstone dust. He clasped the smuggler's forearm. "You smell of onions. The city thanks you. The city may, but Cersei won't. 30 carts of onions, turnips, and hard bread landed this eve. Harbormaster tried to tax me thrice what the cargo's worth. We paid in promise instead of coin. Promise backed by your hammer." Davos unshouldered a burlap satchel and set it on the plank table. Out slid 3 ravens' messages, seals unbroken. "Storm's End, White Harbor, Sunspear," he said. "And a 4th, slipped to me by a whisperer in silks, Varys, I'd wager. No seal." Gendry's brows knit. "News. Storm's End rides. Edric Storm marches with 600 knights of the Rainwood. Lord Tarth brings ships. White Harbor speaks of grain flotillas, but they wait for northern councils first. Dorne." Davos hesitated. "Prince Doran will treat, yet demands safe conduct for his heir, Princess Aerion." "The unsealed note? I'd sooner a dagger. Words can cut deeper." Gendry broke the plain parchment. Only 3 lines, spider small. "Queen sharpens mountain steel. Highgarden hides rose thorns. Faith must guard the anvil's heart." He read twice, then passed it to Davos. "Varys plays every side," Gendry muttered. "But even riddles speak true at times." Davos nodded. "Cersei readies Ser Robert Strong, a mountain reborn. Trial by combat, the rumor runs. If she names you false king, the faith may demand your champion stand." Gendry flexed bruised knuckles. "And if I refuse combat? They will say the hammer fears the sword." A gust rattled shutters. Gendry shoved whetstone aside and paced. "I will not answer Lannister games with more blood in the sand. Yet if I stand idle, small folk die in fires I could have quenched." He turned to Davos. "You served one king who believed swords could carve justice. Where did it leave us?" "On a beach of burnt men," Davos answered. "But Stannis forgot why he fought. He sought right through fire and forgot the living. You remember the living. That's why folk follow." Before dawn they parted, Davos to the harbor, Gendry to the September's western stair where candles guttered before cold statues. He knelt at the warrior's feet and wondered whether any god listened. Behind him footsteps shuffled. The high Sparrow, robe damp at hem. "You fear the trial?" the old man said, voice cracked as kiln bricks. "Fear is no sin. But remember, the stranger walks with all men, even mountain-shaped ones." "I fear failing them," Gendry whispered. "If Ser Robert Strong kills my champion, the city will drown in lion banners. All we've built, nails, mills, loaves, ashes in a week. It need not come to blades." The Sparrow produced a tiny iron circlet, scarcely bigger than a bracelet. Baylor's treatises speak of parley by prayer. Opposing sides kneel, share silence, let the seven judge hearts. If the queen can be brought to the September on the day of trial. Gendry laughed bitterly. "Cersei will not kneel beside me unless chains bind her." He rose. "Still, we can forge trial on our own terms. Give me 3 days." Daybreak's pewter light found Arya in the rafters of the Guildhall once called the House of Seven Lamps. Rats squeaked below where she balanced on a beam, watching 2 men conspire. Qyburn, pale as rain cloud, and a Sellsword captain with Tyroshi dye still fading from beard. They spoke of poison fails, spider stings drowned in river, new methods. Qyburn unrolled velvet to reveal a crystal vial of milk-pale fluid. "1 drop," he said.
"No taste, no scent."
"The Smith King sweats like any man. Let this mingle with his wine." Seizure follows within a candle length, death within the hour. At worst, he survives maimed. The captain eyed the vial. "Price doubles." "Done." Qyburn closed the velvet. "Deliver through red wine vintner crates. The Faith's charity kitchens drink cheap." A single bottle mislabeled. He shrugged. Arya's grip tightened on rusty nail she'd pried from beam. She could drop now, slit both throats, take the vial. But the halls outside swarmed with Sellswords. Better to follow, learn the route. She backed along rafter, vanished into a hatch and out upon slate roof slick with rain. Needle at her hip felt lighter than secrets she carried. In the shadow of the guild gate she found Gendry's page boy, Tom, balancing a tray of bandages. She caught his sleeve. "Word for the king," she hissed. "Poison rides vintner carts." Tom, eyes wide, nodded and scurried. Arya slipped into a tanner's alley to change face beneath grime. Today a hunchbacked beggar woman. Maidenpool's charcoal-smudged letter reached King's Landing by Raven mid-morning. Mills complete, granaries half-filled, 30 carpenters bound for the capital. The Faith militant read it aloud upon the September steps. A cheer went up. But cheer curdled as bell ringers told the hour of penitence, and a column of prisoners marched through River Row. 20 gold cloaks who had laid down arms at the Sparrow's call of forgiveness. Some small folk spat, others wept. The prisoners bowed heads, clad now in rough tunics bearing stitched 7-pointed stars. They were to labor rebuilding the long-rotten span across Rainey's Rush. Redemption by stone and sweat. Cersei watched from Tower of the Hand, knuckles white on balustrade. "He turns my guards into his masons," she snarled to Kevin. "Every traitor he forgives is one more wall in his fortress." Kevin sighed. "If we press harder, we break the city. It was broken the day Robert died." She wheeled on him. "I will not let a bastard reign while my son lives. Tomorrow I name Ser Robert Strong champion in trial by combat. Let the Faith present theirs. And if they refuse, then they confess weakness, and I ride that weakness like a warhorse." Kevin rubbed temples. "Your Grace," the council begs caution. "The council obeys," she snapped.
Ser Robert stands.
Evening settled like bruised silk over Blackwater Bay. Lanterns bobbed along the docks. Gendry strode in plain, cloaked to the Widow's Walk pier where Davos waited beside a sloop thick with cargo nets. 10 more boats tomorrow, Davos said.
Onions, chats, salt cod.
Enough to feed half the city 3 days. 3 days is all we have. Gendry explained Cersei's intent. Davos cursed soft and Sirah. "I fought beside Ser Gregor Clegane before his death. If this Strong is truly the Mountain Reborn, no man bests him except maybe the Hound, and he's vanished. We need no swords, Gendry replied. We need truth in open sight. I'll meet Cersei in trial by witness, not combat. Let the seven decide by sign, not slaughter. Davos frowned. She'll scoff. Not if the city demands it. Bread first, then voices. He clapped Davos's shoulder. Your onions are prayers made flesh. Tomorrow, when bells toll noon, distribute free loaves at every gate. Tell them the Queen Regent forbade grain. Let them choose who feeds them. Davos's grin showed broken teeth. Storm or not, they'll choose bread. As Gendry turned away, shadows stirred by the mooring bollards. Arya fell in beside him, voice faint. It's me! He stopped, eyes widening. Years had roughened her, but he saw the wolf beneath grime. She shoved a scrap of sailcloth into his palm. On it, charcoal sketch of a bottle marked with grapes and a 7-pointed star. Poison, she said. Wine crates, red wine casks. By dawn, he studied drawing. You saved me once. Why again? I kill those who deserve it, she said. You don't yet. A half-smile flickered. Besides, the hound's not here to keep you alive. He laughed, low. Stay. Fight with us. Not yet. I have a queen to gut. She melted into fish-stinking dark. Dawn rose pale and sullen. Cersei's heralds rode every street, crimson plumes dripping dew. By decree of Queen Regent, champion Ser Robert Strong will prove the bastard king's falsehood. Noon tomorrow, square before the great September. The warrior shall favor the righteous. Some folk jeered, others shivered. Tales of Strong's silent form, helm sealed, eyes absent, spread like frostbite. Inside the September, Gendry confronted the High Sparrow and 7 Septons in council. We accept trial, he said, but not blade against blade. Scripture speaks of trial of the 7 bearers. Each side arrays 7 witnesses before gods and folk. If lies stain them, 7 signs will reveal truth. The faith shall judge signs. The Septons muttered. The Sparrow considered. 7 bearers, not invoked in 300 years. Requires 7 chosen by each. What signs? Let the stranger choose, Gendry said. Let the gods show omen in sight of all. I have faith they will. The Sparrow's gaze probed him. Very well. Announce at Vespers. And you're 7. Gendry named them. Sister Yanna, Blind Septa Lyanne, Davos Seaworth, Tom the Page, a former gold cloak named Ardrick who had surrendered his badge, brother Reynold the Mason, and himself. 7 lives bound, he said. No warriors save Davos, and his sword stays sheathed. You risk much, Sparrow warned. We share risk. Let Cersei do the same. Her response came swift. At sunset, she rode to the September Plaza, armored in black velvet over gilded breastplate worked with lions. Strong lumbered behind, mace thick as a child's waist resting on steel shoulder. Herald trumpeted. She proclaimed rejection. The faith twists law to spare its pretender. I accept only trial by combat. Champion against champion. Deny me and confess treason. Jeers peppered her from sallow faces behind Sparrow shields. Yet many eyes fixed on Strong. Tall as doorways, gauntlets wide enough to crush skulls. Cersei turned hoarse, cloak flaring, satisfied. Gendry watched from crowd's rim. He climbed fountain rim, rain beating his cloak. Noon tomorrow, he shouted, voice echoing off marble facades. We appear, 7 witnesses for 7 gods. Let Queen Regent bring her 7, or stand alone with her mountain. He raised clenched fist. A wave of cheers broke, stronger than fear. Cersei paused, glancing back. For the first time doubt shimmered in her green eyes. She returned to the keep where Maester Pycelle wrung hands and Kevin pleaded negotiations. But Qyburn whispered assurance. 7 or 1, Strong stands. Still, at midnight Cersei counted allies. Pycelle frail, Mace Tyrell balking, guards dwindling. She commanded Lannister detachments from Casterly Rock to ride hard. Ravens flew. While she schemed, Arya stalked the Vintner warehouse by Dragon Gate. 2 guards dozed by Brazier. She slid past, lifted latch, stepped into rows of casks. Rats scurried. By lantern splutter she traced chalk glyphs. A grape cluster encircling star. Red wine crates meant for kitchens. She pried a lid. Inside straw nested bottles green as pine needles. She found one sealed with fresh wax, neck tagged by tiny sigil of dragonfly, Qyburn's mark. She swapped it into a burlap sack, stuffed with onion skins for muffling, then scattered chalk dust across remaining crates to disguise disturbance. Outside, hooves clattered, wagon arriving. She ducked behind barrels as teamsters loaded marked casks, sealing wagon doors. Arya followed across riverfront until convoy halted at Bailiff Square, where faith novices awaited deliveries. She slipped into knot of beggars, listening. The master of the kitchens tallied kegs, accepted crate counts. Arya drifted to Sister Yanna. "This one for his grace's table," kitchen master said, lifting dragonfly bottle unsuspecting. Arya coughed sharply, flung handful of onion skins into the man's face. He cursed, dropped bottle. It shattered on cobbles, milky venom hissing where glass splintered. Brother cooks shoved beggars away. Arya was gone, face lost in throng. But Sister Yanna had seen. She knelt, sniffing shard. Acrid. She whispered prayer and sent novice sprinting to the king. Noon. Bells tolled, not alarm but summons. Rain had ceased. Clouds clung purple bruised to horizons. Plaza before Great September thronged shoulder to shoulder. Sparrows lined periphery, cudgels lowered. Gold cloaks ringed Cersei's entourage. Kevin, Pycelle, Mace Tyrell, and 3 Lannister captains plus strong. They counted 7 if captains served as witnesses, though none looked certain. The Faith's 7 stood opposite. Gendry barefoot on marble, Sister Yanna beside him still smelling of ward herbs. Davos in salt-stained surcoat. Septa Leon guided by Tom. Ardrick the former gold cloak shaking yet resolute. Brother Reynauld hefting chisel like scepter. The High Sparrow raised aged hands. 7 bearers stand. Before God and crowd, let truth reveal itself by sign. He commanded silence. Even gulls ceased cries. Cersei swept forward. "I name these proceedings farce," she declared. "I call for trial by combat. My champion waits." She gestured to Strong. Helm mirrored crowd in warped reflection. Gendry stepped. Queen Regent named 7. "Let them stand." He counted captains. "But I see only one of royal blood among them. Where is your faith in gods if you fear their judgment?" Mace Tyrell shifted feet. Kevin avoided gaze. Strong moved not. The Sparrow spoke again. "Signs come to willing hearts. Let the warrior show strength, the father justice, the mother mercy." He signaled acolytes who carried forth a wooden basin brimful with water drawn from the Blackwater at first light, blessed thrice. "Each witness shall drink. If heart lies, water turns to bile and throat. If heart truthful, water remains sweet." Pycelle tottered. "Sorcery of paupers," he croaked, but Kevin forced facade. He drank, throat convulsing, and grimaced yet swallowed. Mace followed, nearly gagging on tension rather than taste. The 3 captains drank. One retched, spitting brown sludge. Murmurs rippled. He wiped mouth, eyes wild. Water indeed had fouled for him alone. The Sparrow raised voice. "Confess false oath and beg mercy." I took coin from Qyburn to spy," the captain stammered. "Forgive, my lord." He fell to knees. Cersei's knuckles went white. She hissed, "Coward." Next, the Faith's 7 approached. Tom drank first sweet, cheeks flushing with pride. Septa Leon sipped, sightless eyes soft. She smiled. Ardrick's hands shook yet water stayed clear. Davos quaffed as sailor might ale still clean. Sister Yanna drank. Her lips curved in gentle certitude. Brother Reynauld gulped. A droplet clung to beard, sparkling beneath noon sun. Finally Gendry lifted basin both hands. He drank slow. When he lowered bowl, water still pure as dawn. The crowd exhaled, a collective breath like wave retreating from shore. Cersei snarled. "Tricks, parlor illusions." She pushed basin aside, beckoned Strong forward. The Sparrow blocked path with frail arm. "All witnesses must drink." Helm pivoted, visor devoid of islets. Strong did not move. Gendry addressed Queen. "What truth does your champion fear?" She spat. "He serves steel, not riddles." She motioned. Strong advanced, mace thudding marble. Gold cloaks lifted shields. Sparrows readied cudgels. The Sparrow faced Gendry. "Another path remains. The anvil's walk. Both parties tread coals laid before the faith. Burns shall mark liars. Skin will blister upon falsehood." Cersei laughed. "Enough!" She thrust hands skyward. Archers on balconies knocked red-fletched arrows. But before command fell, a roar rose from plaza edges. Stormlanders surging behind Edric Storm's banner. Tyrell bannermen shouting for bread, not blood. Small folk pressing like tide. Gold cloaks wavered. A stone whistled overhead. Clanging helm. Archers faltered. Cersei wheeled horse, snarled to Strong. "Cut path!" The silent giant lifted mace, but from crowds crush flew a single black shaft. Arrow hammered his gorget seam with resounding clang. A hiss of green ichor spurted. Strong staggered. Another arrow, gray goose fletching. Pierced visor slit none saw. Helm rocked. The mountain reborn teetered, knees buckling. He fell to one palm, mace denting marble. A third arrow thunked breastplate. Chaos erupted. Shouts, archers loosing at shadows. But Stormlanders shielded Faith's dais. Tyrell spearmen blocked gold cloaks, unsure which order stood. In confusion, Cersei's horse reared. She clung, eyes wide at Strong's collapse. From arrow vantage atop bell tower, Angui the archer lowered you bow, muttering, "Debt to the red god paid." Gendry leapt from platform, reached Strong moments before giant toppled. He seized mace, wrested it free, flung aside. When he pried visor, stench of old rot wafted. Glazed blue eyes rolled in ashen face sown from death. Gendry recoiled. "This is no man," he cried. "This is corpse made weapon." The Sparrow raised voice. "Behold the truth." A gasp rippled as folk glimpsed dead lips stitched shut. Pycelle fainted. Kevin staggered, horrified. Cersei screamed, "Treason!" She spurred horse, fleeing under hail of curses. Gold cloaks retreated, dragging her from square toward Red Keep, leaving Strong's twitching ruin behind. Silence then, brittle as cracked steel. Gendry turned to crowd. "No more dead giants," he said, voice trembling yet loud. "No more hunger. Bread, not corpses. Work, not war." He raised fist. Stormlanders cheered. Tyrell banners dipped. Even some gold cloaks halting saw hope bloom in faces they once clubbed. The High Sparrow spoke solemn. "The seven have judged." He gestured. Brother Masons hoisted Strong's carcass upon bier, covering it with sackcloth. "Abomination wrought by pride," the Sparrow said. "Let him be burned outside city walls at morrow's dawn, as warning." Septa bells pealed victory, but Gendry felt only weight. War not won. Lion wounded still bites. He sought Arya in crowd, but she was gone, leaving only echo of gray goose fletching in shattered visor. Night of strong moonlight. In the secrecy of Red Keep's dungeons, Cersei paced cellars where wildfire once slept. Qyburn knelt, begging forgiveness. "I will raise him again," he pleaded. "Stronger. Enough." Her palm cracked his cheek. "Your monster failed. My brother's gold marches but days away. Until then, we hold fast. Poison, steel, spies, all spent. What remains?" Qyburn licked blood from lip. "Fear, your grace. We spread plague tales. Claim sparrows carry sickness. Carve rat bodies. Leave near faith kitchens. Panic starves faith faster than swords." She considered, eyes glinting. "Do it, and bring me the head of the archer who felled Strong." Qyburn bowed, slunk into shadows. 3 days passed. Strong's pyre burned green where stray wildfire pocket ignited, casting eerie glow upon night clouds. City buried nose in sleeves, yet still lined for bread at dawn. Edric Storm's contingent camped in muddy meadows. Tyrell grain wagons rolled unchallenged. Kevin, fearful of slaughter, sued for parley. Gendry met him in neutral sept garden ringed by rose briars. Daggerless. Your queen plots plague, Kevin admitted low. I cannot sway her. Help me protect the boy king. Tommen is innocent. Gendry studied him, hammerhead resting on boot. Innocent children starve while thrones tilt. Bring Tommen under faith's roof. Let him see bread lines, burnt pyres. Then we talk. Kevin closed eyes. She will kill me. She may try, yet God's watch. Gendry offered calloused hand. We build bridge, not wall. That night Kevin slipped into Tommen's chamber, but Ser Maren barred path. Behind him, Qyburn's birds perched on balcony, attempts foiled. In the yard, Arya perched unseen on Merlin, listening. Her list still whispered Cersei's name, yet now she weighed one life against thousands. Vengeance or realm? She left Red Keep unseen, doubts trailing like ghost prints. Autumn's first full moon bled orange over Kingswood when a column of riders in crimson reached Rose Road Ridge. Jaime Lannister leading 2,000 Casterly knights. At campfire he read reports of Strong's fall, of trial by truth, of city leaning toward Hammer King. Brienne of Tarth rode at his side, eyes wary. They had ridden north together seeking Sansa, but ravens drew them back. Now they must decide, lift lion or shield innocent. Jaime stared at Stump where right hand once glinted gold. Crowns mean less than oaths, he murmured. Brienne answered, then keep the last one that matters. Morning found Jaime presenting himself at Mudgate under white flag. Edric Storm escorted him to Gendry within grain warehouse turned command post. Two bastards of Robert faced each other. One golden hair, one black. I come to speak peace, Jaime said, voice even. The realm bleeds woes enough. Gendry gestured to sacks stacked high. Bread, not swords, wins hearts. Will your lions devour loaves? Jaime's smile held sorrow. Depends which lion you feed. My sister's rage or my brother's hope. Tyrion would dine well on peace. He offered parchment. Proposal for Council of Reconciliation. 6 lords, 6 faith, 6 small folk. Hosted within Red Keep's throne room under truce. Gendry traced seal of golden lion over broken chains. 6 small folk. Jaime nodded. Masons, bakers, fishers. Let them speak. It was bold. Perhaps trap, perhaps salvation. The High Sparrow weighed, nodded. The Mother guides. We accept, under witness of all gods. Cersei, cornered, agreed in fury few saw. Meeting fixed 1 week hence. Yet she armed her final card. Wildfire stores hidden even from Jaime. Qyburn discovered leftover caches beneath Tower of the Hand. She plotted to ignite council at climax. Purge faith and foes alike. Crown Tommen's sole survivor. Pyromancers coerced. Arya overheard fragments from ravens she intercepted. She pieced together plan. She sought Gendry night before council. Found him forging nails luminescent white. Wildfire, she whispered. Tower of the Hand. At council chamber base. Gendry plunged rod into quench, steam hissing. Then we move council to Great September instead. Cersei will refuse. Then truth reveals. Flame or faith, we shall see. Council day. Banners draped throne room but seats empty. Cersei waited. Tommen beside on lesser chair. Door burst. Kevin, face ashen. Announced faith delegation refused entry. Demanded session in September. Jaime argued same. Cersei's plan faltered. Wildfire beneath tower useless if meeting moved. She feigned reason. Rode procession to September but left Qyburn orders to light fuses on bell toll should she raise handkerchief. Inside September nave, 3 circles of 6 gathered. Small folk chosen by lottery, washerwoman, ratcatcher, potboy, crippled veteran, stonemason, wet nurse. They trembled yet spoke. Hunger stories, taxes, fear. Lords responded, Mace promising grain, Kevin reforms. Sparrow intoned mercy. Gendry listened, then stood. No crown is worth a child's cry, he said. Break wheel of gold on backs. We form charter of bread. Tithe of royal coffers to feed poorest. Guild seats on council. standing right of appeal before Faith Tribunal. Lords murmured. Small folk cheered softly. Cersei's eyes narrowed. She fingered lace handkerchief. Then washerwoman, a mother of 4, told of daughter dead for want of feverfew. Tears streaked dust on her cheeks. Tommen wept silently beside throne bench where he sat. He pulled free from mother's grasp, approached washerwoman, placed royal seal ring in her palm. For your family, he said. The hall hushed. Cersei froze, handkerchief slipping. Jaime saw heart lurch. In that instant, Queen's fury collapsed beneath boy's mercy. Unmistakable sign. The crowd knelt to Tommen, not to Lion Queen nor Hammer King, but to kindness. Cersei's plan died. Wildfire fuses quenched by indecision. Qyburn's conspirators aborted, fearing God's wrath if children incinerated. In ensuing hours, Charter of Bread ratified 6 wax seals, including lion, stag, rose, sun spear, fish, sparrow star. Gendry signed last. Faith militant returned to barracks. Gold cloaks resumed patrols under new charter to deliver daily bread. Night that followed, Gendry climbed roof where he had once raised hammer. Arya joined, feet light. List is shorter, she said. Cersei's name, I'll leave to fate for now. He offered half-smile. Fate forged by choices. Yours.
Mine.
Hers. She nodded, eyes reflecting city lights. If she breaks promise, I finish list. That I'll not oppose, he said. Below, plaza filled with lanterns floated on water troughs, each flame a prayer for peace. Bells chimed gentle. Gendry exhaled, feeling weight ease, if only moment. Tomorrow new trials. Ironborn raids, winter snows, Dornish envoys, Tyrell ambitions. But tonight a bridge held. He turned to Arya. Tell me of Needle, he asked. She drew slender blade, steel gleaming. Still sharp, like hope, you just keep honing. In the hush of autumn night, Smith King and Wolf Girl watched lanterns drift. A hammer rested nearby, cooled, yet ready. Nails awaited roofs, bread awaited ovens, and somewhere in dark corridors, lions reconsidered claws. The realm still trembled, but trembled on Anvil's heart, where now 2 bastards, 1 boy king, and a girl with needle-shaped steel of tomorrow. Stroke by stroke, choice by choice, slow as dawn over a city that had almost forgotten morning. The sun that rose 3 days after the Charter of Bread shimmered against a sky drained thin as ice water, its pale gleam turning the dew-slick rooftops of King's Landing into a patchwork of tarnished copper. The city breathed easier than it had in moons. Ovens belched steam instead of clawing smoke. Cistern bells chimed as buckets drew clean water. The markets smelled of onion stew, freshly milled barley, even the faint perfume of Reach apples. Yet beneath these small mercies, fault lines still trembled unseen. Gendry began the morning in the cobbler's ward where carts full of raw leather and half-sewn boots had clogged every alley. He moved among workbenches, sleeves rolled, checking sawls, measuring lasts, hammering pegs. Each tap on hide echoed the promise that hands would mend the realm faster than spears. When a journeyman begged pardon to present a pair of sturdy children's shoes, Gendry knelt to examine the work, stitching neat, buckles polished, and declared them fit for princes or paupers alike. The streets outside applauded as if a crown approval mattered more than gold. But good news travels slower than ironborn sails. By mid-morning, a raven beat weary wings across the Blackwater, feathered body streaked with salt spray, landing on the September's highest spire where its parchment clacked against the edge like a warning bell. It bore seal of a kraken crowned in rusted iron. The letter told of raids on the shores of Cape Wrath. Selmy's Point sacked, Bronzegate burned, ships seized, women taken. Euron Greyjoy's silence had ended. Gendry read the lines twice, blood rushing like forge wind in ears. He pushed away from the pulpit and strode the nave to find Davos, who conferred with Edric Storm over distribution of Tyrell barley. When Davos met his eyes, the Onion Knight knew trouble had cracked morning's calm. Greyjoy raids, Gendry said, jaw tight. We cannot feed a realm while it bleeds from the shoreline. Davos rubbed beard. We need ships and men who can command them. My black sails can scout, but war galleys guard grain. Across the plaza, Arya practiced footwork with a broom handle among Sparrow recruits, correcting a boy's stance as if sword forms were chores. She saw Gendry's set shoulders and moved to intercept, but paused when children tugged her tunic to see the trick again. She taught them the water dance of bravos, hips loose, feet silent. If tides brought krakens, she would be ready. That afternoon, a council gathered in the September scriptorium, the same high-arched hall where novices once copied canticles in solitude. Now maps and ledgers crowded oak tables, and the air smelled of ink, candle smoke, and damp wool from cloaks hastily hung. Jaime Lannister took a seat opposite Gendry, Brienne at his shoulder like an inviolate tower. Kevan arrived, face worn but resolute. Marjorie Tyrell followed, eyes bright with calculated concern. PR. Doran's envoy Lady Nymeria Sand drifted in on sand-colored silks. Davos unrolled charts of the gullet and stepstones. Gendry spoke first.
Euron strik escape vred.
He will strike again. Lannisport and Arbor fleets may fend him, but Stormland's coasts lie bare. Nymeria Sand tapped parchment. Dorne will not sail north unless guaranteed safe passage through straits, nor while Queen Regent remains poised to pour wildfire on any quay. Marjorie countered. The Reach offers ships, but Lord Paxtor Redwine demands recompense. His daughters languish in Lannisport under Crown's hostage writ. Ice turned to Kevan. He exhaled slow. The Crown will release the Redwine girls if Euron's fleets are broken. Tommen seeks peace more than ransom. Jaime added, and I have written Casterly Rock. Lannister Dromons sail within a fortnight. The Crown, such as it stands, will fight krakens. Gendry nodded. We convene a navy of necessity, but ships starve without sailors. The small folk trust the hammer. They will heed my call. Galley oars require no titles, only strong arms. Prince Doran's envoy raised brow. Arms are strong but untrained. Who commands? Davos stepped forward. I'll take Black Betha to scout. Ser Imry Wild leads Stormland hulls. Lord Redwine sails the bigger warships. A council at sea, each decision in plain sight, no mutinies. His smile showed weathered faith. We're not so proud we can't share a deck. As the council adjourned, Brienne approached Gendry. If your ship needs swords, I'll sail, she offered. Her armor bore no sigil now, only crisscross scars polished by wind. Jaime's gaze lingered on her, fierce and gentle at once. Gendry clasped her gauntlet hand. Your blade serves the realm, he agreed. We can use a shield of honor on any deck. Outside, crows cawed from crenellations, drumming claws on stone like distant hoofbeats. Winter teased the air. Faint scent of snow carried on gusts from the mountains of the moon. The first frosts would come soon. Bread ovens glowed, but hunger never slept. Within the Red Keep, Cersei paced the Queen's ballroom, each stride tracing scorch marks where wildfire lampoons once hung. Qyburn knelt, showing sketches of caged ravens infected with carrion fever. Release these along the Stormland's coast, he said, and Greyjoy's foothold becomes a plague pit. The bastards will choke on their own trickle of trade. Cersei's lips curved. Do it, if only to spite the Smith King's charity. Let the small folk beg my mercy. She flung an empty goblet against a pillar. And find me the archer who slew Strong.
No pantom di faisme.
Rumors say Archer of the Hollow Hill joined the Brotherhood, Qyburn murmured. We track. Cersei brushed away concern. Kill one ghost, another will rise. Better to make ghosts of them all. On the night Gendry's fleet prepared sail, Arya visited the docks. Lanterns flickered along quays where carpenters hammered last planks. Riggers hauled canvas. Oxen hauled flour barrels up gangplanks that creaked under grain's weight. Davos shouted orders, voice carrying across water like gull shriek. Edric Storm tested bowstrings atop forecastle, black hair whipping. Arya found Gendry leaning against Black Betha's rail, palm running over pitch seams. Leaving again, she said. Storms end blood can't rest, he answered, half-smile. Take care, she said, then produced a leather wrist guard sewn with dire wolf motif. It's for or work, saves skin. When he tied it on, she turned before sentiment could sprout. I have names yet, but I'll keep city quieter than Kraken. He touched her sleeve. Needle stays sharp. Always. She vanished between crates, silent as a cat. Dawn flushed crimson as the fleet slipped from harbor. Black Betha, made of Tarth, Harvest Rose, Lady's Voice, Sun Spear's Gift, and 30 smaller fishing cogs refitted with slings and scorpions. Gendry stood on quarterdeck of the Hammer's Song, a broad-beamed ship renamed that morning after city smiths reworked her prow into Iron Hammer Head. As oars dipped, folk on walls sang hymns. The journey to Cape Wrath began. At sea, Davos convened council on Black Betha's rear deck. Charts spread atop barrel. Stepstones tongues, tides, likely Kraken paths. Redwine captains argued reach of ballista bolts. Lord Wild boasted firepots laced with tar. Brienne listened, arms folded, eyes on horizon where clouds massed like ragged sails. Her instinct whispered a storm of more than weather. 2 days south, the fleet sighted smoking village at Greenstone's northern cape. Hovels gutted, wharf pilings snapped, blackened posts draped with hanged corpses, tongues cut. Gendry ordered boats crewed to ferry healers ashore. Brienne escorted them among wreckage, stepping over charred bones. One old man still clung to life in a net litter, all limbs broken. He coughed, spat blood, and croaked a warning. Not Kraken, ravens, black sails with red eye. Before he died, he pressed Brienne's wrist. Winged eye hunts king's blood. Davos paled at the report. Euron's sigil is red eye, he said. But his sails black on black, no red. Someone tries mislead. Gendry studied the village pattern of burning. Barrels of pitch splattered too neat. False flag, he agreed. Who profits from blaming Kraken? The Queen Regent, if fleet sails into trap. They doubled watches. Night sea rolled silent, but tension creaked louder than spars. 3 leagues off Massey's Hook, Black Betha's crow saw glimmer on moonlit swell. A line of barrels lashed end to end. Davos hailed lantern code to flagship. The Hammer's Song edged closer. Brienne discerned symbols carved into driftwood. 7 pointed stars. As sailors reached with hooks to retrieve, a soft hiss rose. Fuses hidden beneath tar ignited. Brienne shouted, "Back!" The barrels burst in green fire. Wild voltaic tongues leapt, consuming prow. 2 sailors went overboard ablaze. The sea itself took flame as wildfire burned atop water, lighting horror. Yet the Hammer's Song veered clear, sails snapping. 7 more strings of barrels drifted, forming net across channel. Wildfire lines herded fleet toward shoal waters where jagged rocks waited. From starboard, massive hulls in darkness revealed themselves. Longships, yes, but sails black and white, harpy sigils of marine repainted. Pirates of the Stepstones, hired men of Karth, perhaps Cersei's coin. Their captains shouted in Valyrian, loosing flares. Battle exploded. Mace Tyrell's drumships hurled pots of burning pitch. Redwine ballistae thumped. Black Betha's catapult flung kegs of chain shot that shredded sails. Gendry swung hammer at grappling hooks, knocking boarders into greenlit waves. Brienne cut 3 men down before they touched deck. Edric Storm notched arrow after arrow, shafts hissing. Yet for every pirate hull aflame, 2 more closed. Then Davos's smuggler wit sparked. He ordered cogs loaded with grain sacks to scuttle between wildfire nets, sacks bursting into flames, choking water with floating crust that smothered green tongues. Holes opened in fiery barrier. The fleet slipped through, leaving burning husks as feast for gulls. At dawn, only smoke remained. Gendry searched decks for wounded. 50 dead, 20 missing, 2 ships lost. Worse than blood. Captured sailors dangled from or ports of a retreating longship. Red eyes painted grotesque across their chests in drying blood. Euron or copycat. Gendry swore those men would be avenged. Davos suggested pursuit. Gendry shook head. Mission first. Cape Wrath. They patched sails, set course. Back in King's Landing, Arya stalked the alleys near the black cells, dressed as half-drunk washerwoman. and heard whispers of plague plot. Qyburn's ravens wended towers, infected with rot. She found one in a cage behind Alchemist's Guildhall, peeling scales from its feet.
Blister swept pus.
She gutted the bird, buried it in lime pit, and left dagger mark, wolf head, on crate to warn any literate eyes. Sister Yanna, alerted by notes slipped beneath infirmary door, dispatched novices to collect suspicious cages. They found 5 at city gates, another 3 bound for Stormland's refugee quarter. All burned, disease averted for now. Cersei, enraged, doubled bounty on the wolf sigil. Gold cloaks questioned beggars, cut throats of those who failed answers. Arya moved faster, now face of Tinker, now silent child. Each night she left chalk wolves upon Red Keep's outer walls, taunt to queen and promise to small folk. The hammer's song rounded Cape Wrath to find Selmy's Point still smoking. Ironborn axes indeed, not pirate scimitars. Charred driftwood held rusted nails of Iron Isles make. Yet villagers testified Ironborn sailed away days earlier, bound east. Their path angled toward Stepstones, same route pirates emerged. Someone puppet-mastered chaos. At the ruins, a boy of 8 approached Gendry with bundle. Pieces of chainmail fused by heat, but on the inside stamped lion prowling over 7-point star. Lannister forging. Gendry thanked boy, gave him silver stag, and turned to Davos. Proof Queen aids raiders, he said. Brienne frowned. Could be stolen armor. Or planted, Davos said. Either way, politics now. We sail to Dragonstone. Stannis' old seat stands watch on shipping lanes. If we hold it, we guard Gullet and cut raiders' retreat. Within hours, they dropped anchor in Dragonstone's lee. Black basalt walls loomed, carved dragons snarling from every parapet, mouths open to see wind. Once Davos delivered smuggled onions through these cliffs. Now he returned as admiral to retake them. The garrison that remained was sparse, 4 dozen crown soldiers under Ser Lothier Brune, loyal more to coin than cause. They welcomed bread shipments and surrendered keys for promise of pay. Gendry established quartermaster, stockpiled grain. Brienne drilled sailors with shields on inner ward, forging new Dragonstone guard. As moon crested blood-red over smoking vents, horns blared. Sails sighted Kraken sigil 3 longships. Scouts reported they carried stolen captives, chained to prows as shields. Gendry debated. Davos counseled stealth. Slip at night, free captives before attack. Brienne volunteered infiltration. Plans struck, torches dimmed. Under moonless sky, Brienne, Davos, and a dozen oarsmen rowed in silence, oars muffled. They drew alongside first longship, hooks grabbed rail. Brienne climbed, sword ready. Crew slept drunk on stolen wine. She cut bonds of sailors lashed to prow, 2 of Gendry's missing men. They whispered of torture, of captor named Harag Sharpfin, nephew to Victarion. Before alarm rose, Davos guided captives to skiff and slipped away. But Brienne's mail-scraped mast. Axe-bearing Reaver woke, shouted. Boards clattered. Horns sounded. The bay erupted in clash. Dragonstone scorpions hurled bolts. Longships replied with firepots. One struck Black Betha's mast, sparking blaze. Gendry ordered buckets. Wind shifted. Flames blew back into longship that launched pot, igniting its sail. Reavers plunged wet but burning. The other 2 ships fled, oars churning like frantic fins. Brienne, still on deck of first vessel, cut anchor, trimmed half-burned sail, and piloted prize back to fortress, steering with arms strained. Dawn found her laughing wearily while smiths hammered new mast rings. She named captured vessel Oathkeeper's prize. Weeks bled into one another. Storm after storm battered the fleet, but Dragonstone's smoke-breathing halls gave shelter. Gendry set up forge in Old Smithy, repurposing Valyrian blast steel hoods to craft nails for hull repairs. Each clang cast sparks that danced in gloom like new stars. When sailors passed carrying wounded, he paused to fit them wood and iron crutches, all while wearing crown patched by soot. Word of Smith King on the Anvil Isle spread faster than ravens. On a quiet eve, Jaime arrived by barge under truce flag. He brought parchment sealed by Tommen's own hand, declaration renouncing Lannister claims on stepstones if Ironborn threat crushed, promise of grain charter support, and request for Gendry's guidance to refurbish King's Landing's orphanages. The boy king wrote in shaky script, "Mother cannot hear yet, but I believe we can be friends for realm." Gendry touched the ink, heart warmed. Jaime stayed the night, dining on fish stew with Brienne and Davos. They laughed at stories of Tobo Mott's forge, of green boys turned lords. But wait returned when Jaime confided. Cersei stockpiles wildfire again. Beneath September this time. Brienne's spoon halted mid-lift. The September? Jaime nodded. She means to end the game if she loses. Ashes? Then lions rise from cinders. Gendry's face hardened. Then we must win before she strikes the match. In King's Landing, Arya crept through old crypt beneath September, following maps she'd pieced from stolen blueprints. She crawled through rat tunnels, rubbing shoulders with bone dust. At end of passage, she saw glimmer, wildfire vials stacked like emerald stars. Alchemists whispered incantations while Tyrell House guards stood uneasy watch. They did not know Queen planned to hijack caches. Arya counted kegs, at least 50, enough to ruin half the city. She retreated, heart hammering. Plan formed sharper than needle. Sabotage fuses, damp black powder. Replace wax wicks with stolen beeswax laced in tallow that burned slow. She returned next night, disguised as novice hauling candles. Alchemists nodded, consumed by chant rhythm. She worked quickly, swapping wicks, sprinkling sand inside fuse lengths. When she left, wildfire was a toothless dog. Before dawn, she painted chalk wolf over September door, her signature that city yet lived. Qyburn saw it at sunrise. He cursed, recognized sabotage. He ordered barrels inspected, found fouled wicks. Rage coiled. Cersei's fury scalded hotter. She commanded him to craft plague bombs of nightshade blended with wildfire. If sabotage prevented fire, poison fumes would still kill. Qyburn obliged, but his stores dwindled. He needed fresh corpses for tests. Gold cloaks silently took vagrants. Their disappearance reached Sister Yanna, who reported to Sparrow. Investigation began. Faith Militant uncovered hidden laboratory beneath Tower of Maegor, where Qyburn experimented on living men. One freed prisoner named Podrick Payne stumbled into September courtyard, scars fresh, whispering horrors. Outcry erupted. Small folk marched to Red Keep demanding Qyburn's head. Jaime, recently returned, confronted Cersei. End this madness. She struck him, yelled of betrayal. He left, wounded more by heart than bruise, and sought refuge with Brienne in Blackwater Rush Camp. There he pledged sword to realm, not lion. Far north, snows deepened. Ravens from Winterfell carried news. White Harbor loaded grain barges south, honored charter. But Godswood whispers told of others stirring beyond wall again. Bran the boy lord wrote in shaky runes. Winter's shadows lengthen. Hammer may be needed here too. Gendry sighed. One war at time. On Dragonstone, Lady Nymeria Sand and Edric Storm sparred nightly with staffs, forging bond of youth and stubborn will. She teased him fishblood for Stormland's heritage. He called her Viper with grin. Sparks flew not only from weapons. Davos saw and prayed pairing might bind Dorne and Stormlands in peace. News of captured Ironborn flagships spurred Euron to react. Ravens arrived tied to severed hands drifting on tide. Send back my kin or I'll send waves of screams. Gendry wrote none in reply. Instead he prepared fleet for final strike. Drive Kraken from sea lanes, free captives, secure coast so grain may flow. Brienne led boarding drills, Edric practiced arrow volleys, Davos charted tides. Nymeria's spies returned with word. Euron musters at the island chain called Stonehelm Sisters, 50 longships and 2 captured galleys. Their decks loaded with scorpions reworked to launch pitchpots and chain harpoons. Gendry convened war council beneath Dragonstone's dragon-carved ceiling. Brick furnaces glowed in corners like open maws. He traced plan. Lure Kraken into narrows between Wailing Head and Widow's Tor. There, hidden scorpions on cliffs would punish hulls from above while fleet hammered from sea. But cliffs lacked war machines. Brienne volunteered to lead party scaling rocks with winches and haul repurposed ballistae. Jaime offered knowledge of Casterly siege engines. Unlikely allies readied tools. They set out at dusk on storm-bent fishing skiffs, rowing beneath high cliffs where waves smashed. Rain lashed faces, but ropes held. Atop edges they assembled scorpion frames, coils creaking under strain. Edric scrabbled up last, carrying crates of corals. Dawn's first light saw 60 bolts tipped with flasks of thick clay pitch. Meanwhile, fleet sailed openly toward Sisters, Black Betha flying Smith King's hammer in defiance. Euron's outriders sighted and gave chase. At midday, Narrow's approach shimmered with crosscurrents, exactly as Davos predicted. Wind died. Ironborn drums boomed. Gendry ordered oars drawn close to rocks, feigning confusion.
Eurones ships surged.
Signal arrow whistled from cliff. Scorpion bolts rained down, smashing into longships, jars of pitch bursting, flames clinging. Caught in swirl, the reavers floundered. Some beached hard on hidden shoals. Gendry launched hammers song into melee, ram caving sideboard, boarding spikes biting. He swung Smith's hammer over helm of first foe, denting steel and skull beneath. Brienne descended ropes into chaos, sword carving paths. Jaime fought at her back, left hand clumsy but dagger quick. Euron himself appeared on deck of silence, cause of madness echoing. He wore black-feathered cloak, patch over eye, lips twisting in ecstasy. He pointed at Gendry. "King of Forges," he shouted across water. "Give me your blood, king's blood, and I'll crown the oceans." He roared laughter, slitting throat of captive bound to prow, blood spraying waves. Gendry caught his gaze, lifted hammer. "Your crown rusts." Silence veered, grappling hammer's song amid burning debris. A gangplank slammed. Euron strode across like a dancer, wielding axe carved with runes. Gendry met him mid-deck. Metal rang, hammer block, axe slide. Sparks flew, wood splintered under boots. Rain steamed on hot pitch fires. They traded blows. Euron's axe chipped helm rim. Gendry's hammer broke pauldron. Euron feinted, spat black bile, kicked barrel into Smith King's shin. Gendry stumbled, but seized barrel's rim, heaved it overside, dragging Euron with sudden pull. Axe lodged in railing. Euron lost grip, toppled into sea churning with flames. His cloak caught, feathers burned. He vanished beneath froth. Silence's crew broke, scrambling. Davos swung Black Betha to cut off retreat. Arrow from Edric shot helmsman. Ship drifted. Reavers leapt overboard. Flames roared. By dusk, Kraken fleet lay in charred shards among rocks. Few survivors clung to wreckage. Dragonstone galleys hauled captives, small folk, stolen children, maesters onto decks. Among them, Gendry found a bearded Stormlander who once served at his forge as porter. Tears rolled as the man thanked Smith King for rescue. Euron's body not found. Some claimed sharks took him. Others swore they saw a lone figure riding driftwood toward eastern horizon, one eye gleaming even in dusk. Victory chants carried north on gull wings, reaching King's Landing in 2 days. On hearing them, small folk gathered at September steps, singing hammer hymns in 3 harmonies. Qyburn's ravens fell silent. Plague plan abandoned, as corpses now needed burying, not stealing. Cersei retreated to Queen's chambers, curtains drawn. Rumors whispered she spoke to shadows of wildfire glimmering inside her goblet. The High Sparrow led Thanksgiving procession through city, distributing BR. AD stamped with hammer and star. Tommen marched beside him, holding lantern. Arya watched from crowd, list in hand, then tucked parchment away. Some names fade when new dawn rises. That dawn or the next, snowflakes drifted over Blackwater for first time in 10 years. Children shrieked delight, catching flakes on tongues. Snow melted on Forge Enville where Gendry flogged last sparks from nail. Winter had come, but city held bread and hope. Yet far beyond the wall, white shadows marched. In Dorne, sand vipers plotted. Riverland's smugglers eyed empty castles. The game never ended. In Dragonstone's throne room, once seat of dragon lords, Gendry sat with Davos, Brienne, Jaime, Nymeria, Edric, and Prince Doran's emissary via Mirrorglass. They drafted Pact of the Narrow Sea, free trade passages, mutual defense, grain reserve, an armistice that bound Stormlands, Dorne, Reach, and Crownlands in weave strong as chainmail rings. Jaime sealed for Crown, Nymeria for Sunspear, Mace's Steward for Reach, Edric for Stormlands, Gendry for Faithful Realm. Back in King's Landing, Sister Yanna reopened old orphanage near Flea Bottom, now stocked by charter coin. Septa Liane oversaw weaving hall for widows. Ardric commanded City Watch Division tasked with guarding grain, not taxing it. On first patrol, he found gold cloaks handing out loaves. He smiled. Gendry returned weeks later, greeted by cheers echoing off rooftops. He walked barefoot to September, crown under arm, hammer slung. High Sparrow met him, eyes moist. "You have tempered kingdom," he said. "Only first forging," Gendry answered. "Steel must cool, then burn again to hold edge." He mounted pulpit, addressed crowd. "Today we celebrate bread and peace, yet remember war may return. Keep hammers ready, not to destroy but build. Build roofs before snow deepens. Build boats to fish, build plowshares to till. A realm stands not on thrones, but on hands." Bells rang. Snow started again, soft, silent. Children danced, footprints tracing new heraldry on Marble Square. Hammer, star, direwolf, lion, rose, sun, fish, onion. Sigils of unity once thought impossible. Arya leaned against a column, watching flakes settle on Needle's guard. She whispered to lost faces, "Peace for now." Then she walked into swirling white, vanishing like ghost the realm still needed but might never fully know. In Red Keep's library, Jaime penned letter to Tyrion across the sea. "For once, brother, we forged something that did not shatter." He signed with left-hand scrawl, sealing in wax carved with simple line. A hammer over crown broken open, a seed sprouting from fracture. Brienne set sail north to fulfill oath to find Sansa still. Edric and Nymeria rode Stormsalt road south to show Dorne bread from Hammer's ovens. Davos prepared ships loaded not with war but with onion clippings for spring planting. Sister Yanna nursed plague orphans now healthy enough to chase seagulls. And Gendry, king of the faithful, bastard made true, returned to forge each dusk, still the same smith, turning rough iron into tools, sparks rising around him like stars. He tempered blades the realm still needed, but tucked them safely away, hoping they never saw blood. Above, the stranger watched, silent as ever, while Mother smiled faintly, warrior sheathed sword, father judged deeds, and crone whispered wise wind over the city's spires. Hammer strokes rang on, steady, shaping tomorrow. For in the land of broken thrones, sometimes a nail driven true can hold kingdoms fast. Sometimes bread can best swords. Sometimes the smallest spark can melt the hardest iron. And as snow thickened, covering scars yet unhealed, Westeros breathed. For a season at least, the rarest gift a realm of war could know. A pause. Cold crept into King's Landing like an uninvited guest. First a whisper in the dawn wind that slid beneath shutters, then a thin white crust on every rain-black eve, and finally a brittle frost that spider-webbed across the dragon pit's broken dome. On the morning the Blackwater froze at its edges, something no grandmother in Flea Bottom claimed to remember. Gendry Baratheon knew the short truce between war and winter had ended. The realm might have paused. The seasons never did. He woke long before sunrise, hammer already in hand, striking sparks off the anvil in the forge courtyard behind the Great September. Each blow rang sharper than the crisp air, carving blade after blade from bar stock no wider than a thumb. The knives were not for war but for carpenters and leatherworkers. Yet the symbolism did not escape the crowd that soon formed outside the palisade. A king who forged steel while others still huddled in blankets. Sister Yanna arrived with warm barley porridge and a frown, gently chiding that even kings needed sleep. He grunted, rolled stiff shoulders, and quenched the final knife until steam rose like ghostly banners in the gloom. By first light, council bells rang. Inside the scriptorium, now popular enough to host benches 3 rows deep, sat Jaime Lannister, Brienne of Tarth, Davos Seaworth, Margaery Tyrell, Nymeria Sand, Kevin Lannister, and the High Sparrow. The benches reserved for the 6 of the people were occupied by a baker from River Row, a blacksmith's widow, a dock worker, a midwife, a veteran of the watch, and Podrick Payne. His voice, still shaky from horrors survived in Qyburn's basement, but clear enough to weigh in on matters of the city watch. Outside the arched windows, snowflakes the size of coppers drifted, melting on the glass and racing downward like slow tears. Gendry took the head of the table. "News from the north?" he asked without preamble. Margaery stood, reading from Maester Tybald's Raven. White wolf banners seen near the last river, free folk fleeing southward, tales of pale riders in pine forests, 3 watchtowers on the wall dark. The parchment crackled like dry kindling between her fingers. Nymeria spread her own scroll. And from Dorne, sandrunners reached Sunspear reporting water starting to freeze in Cabra Oasis for the first time since Nymeria of Royne led her people across the narrow sea. The green blood has slowed to a crawl. My uncle sends dates and lemons in tribute but begs wool and iron. She tapped her nail against the map of Westeros laid atop the table. Winter is in the bone of every kingdom now. Jaime said nothing at first. He ran his golden gaze over the room and then finally spoke. The realms will hold together if we have bread. Snow or no, hunger is the real enemy. Lannister granaries remain stocked, and where coin cannot buy, honor might. Kevin cleared his throat. And if honor fails? Then we borrow from the Iron Bank, Jaime said, surprising even himself. They prefer interest to anarchy. Brienne's steely eyes held Gendry's. War in the north cannot be ignored. If the wall fails, it will not, interrupted Davos. Jon Snow holds it. Raven came to Dragonstone 2 nights prior while you were still at sea. It carries his mark, a lone direwolf under blizzard sun. He defeated a probing host of whites at Eastwatch, but his stores dwindle. Gendry remembered Jon's quiet resolve from days marching in King Robert's retinue and the later stories of his death and resurrection. A man like forged steel, tempered by flame and frost alike. What does he want? Gendry asked. Dragonglass, Davos answered, and faith from the south that his fight matters. Nymeria raised a brow. Dragonstone sits upon a mountain of obsidian, does it not? The Valyrians mined it for centuries. Davos gave a humorless chuckle. A mountain, yes, but carved into the shape of snarling beasts and clinging onto the side of a cliff. Ripping blocks of glass from those tunnels in winter seas will cost men and blood. Gendry pushed back from the bench. Then those men will be me and mine. If we can break axes fashioning nails, we can break picks carving dragonglass. Sparrow's papery voice floated above the discussion. What sacrifice will you ask of the faithful? None, said Gendry. Only volunteers. He surveyed the faces around him. Lords, small folk, warriors, and widows. The Seven's prophecy, if it even exists, chose me, but I will not choose others for the stranger. The midwife in the people's bench lifted a gnarled hand. I'll go north, she said. These old fingers know how to splint bones and birth calves in snow. Next the dock worker rose, broad shoulders rolling. And I've rode into storms worse than snow. Margaery Tyrell's smile tilted. House Tyrell will send galleys to bear them. The Reach's wealth is worthless if the world ends in ice. Across the table, Kevin Lannister dipped his quill. I'll sign that, he murmured. For Tommen. He dreams of a summer he has never known. Jaime added his name, golden hand pressing wax seal gently into place. And so the pact of obsidian formed. Black glass for white death, bread for blades of faith, and volunteers drawn from every corner of the realm. By sundown, the courtyard outside the September felt like a fair, though not one of laughter and song. Blacksmiths tested iron picks. Carpenters hammered sledges and sled frames. Sailors coiled ropes so thick even giants might strain. Overhead, the flakes fell heavier, dusting helmets and shoulders, sticking to horse manes. Brienne moved among the recruits, adjusting straps, muttering corrections like a septa with unruly pupils. Jaime leaned on a wagon tongue, wrapped in a stiff cloak of blue. "What would your sister say if she saw you now?" Brienne asked, fastening a belt on a girl no older than 12 who insisted she could swing a hatchet. "She would call it folly." Jaime's breath puffed white. "But perhaps she has grown bored of her own blood." He glanced toward the Red Keep, lights glittering like rubies under the snow. "I gave her every chance to redeem herself. You can't forge steel from rotten ore." Brienne slipped her gauntlet into his maimed hand. "Rot can be cut away," she said softly, eyes the color of a gentle dawn above Tartha's sapphire waters. "But only if the blade is kept sharp." He squeezed as best as he could. "And how fares your blade, my lady?" "Hungry," she answered. They watched as Gendry emerged from the forge with a Gretamer slung across his shoulders, a looming silhouette wreathed in steam. Its head was shaped from salvaged barstock left over after years of war and famine. The haft bore runes in the tongue of the first men, cut by a Crannogman who had followed Davos here. Gendry stopped before Jaime and Brienne. "There's room on the northern road for more warriors," he said. "Either of you could hold a pick as well as any." Jaime shook his head. "My place is in King's Landing. Someone must make sure the Queen Regent does not burn the city a second time. She hates you, Gendry, but she fears me more. For now." "Then stay," said Brienne. "I will ride with the smith. Oathkeeper has not tasted real battle since the sisters, and I'll not let that sword grow dull." Jaime managed a rueful smile. "It seems I've become the one left behind." He clapped Gendry on the shoulder. "Keep her safe, and then quieter. And keep yourself alive. The realm needs builders." At dawn 4 days later, a procession wound from the Mudgate. 500 volunteers on horseback, 80 wagon loads of tools and provisions, 30 carts sherped by oxen and donkeys jostling with barrels of salted pork and sacks of barley. Ahead rode Gendry and Brienne. Davos captained a vanguard of ships that would hug the coast and meet them at the White Knife. Marjorie Tyrell stood on the city wall, scattering petals of late-bloom winter roses onto the travelers. Tommen Baratheon watched from a tower window, cheeks pressed to cold glass, lips shaping silent farewell. Sister Yanna wept openly, blessing each cart in turn. Arya Stark, face hidden beneath thick hood, watched from the gatehouse parapet. Needle's point rasped against the stone as she traced the outline of the gate arch. 1, 2, 3 strokes, the silent promise of her watch. She felt the call to ride north tug at her like a fishhook in the gut. But the city's children still needed a guardian in shadows, and Cersei's fire still smoldered. The wolf must remain where prey still prowled. She followed the column with pale eyes until their banners and plumes disappeared into dusty white haze. The first week's travel proved manageable. Roads rutted but open, and still stocked with root vegetables and thin ale. Villages greeting the Hammer King's party with tentative cheers. They crossed Blackwater Rush at Stonebridge, where brown water sloshed beneath. Snow thickened to a half-foot carpet, muffling hooves and wagon wheels until the procession seemed to glide. On the 10th evening, they reached the Kingsroad Fork, where the path east bent to Maidenpool and the path north to Harrenhal. Here they met Edric Storm and Nymeria Sand leading a fresh company of 200 Sunspear spearmen clad in scaled leather as pale as moonlit dunes, their yellow cloaks bright against the snow. They had marched through the Bone-Dry Prince's Pass and across the storm-tossed marches simply because Nymeria refused to be left behind. Her laugh carried on the wind as if daring the snow to melt around her. "Dornish roses at the edge of winter," Brienne remarked, eyes shining with almost admiration. Nymeria tossed back a braid. "A bloom can cut just as deep as a sword, my lady, and winter has never met heat like ours." She winked at Edric, who flushed scarlet beneath his hood. Together they advanced into the Riverlands, where ruins of war lay half-buried under frost. Collapsed farmsteads like skulls, scorched orchards now skeletal groves. In one place, a crumbling tower decorated with banners of House Frey left to rot. Gendry ordered the banners torn down and burned. Brother Reynauld, now master builder of the Faith's host, set men to gathering stone from the tower rubble to build cairns over unmarked graves discovered nearby. The work slowed them, But Gendry would not leave bones exposed to ravens. On the 12th day, the wind changed. It came howling off the north, churning drifts knee-high. Wagons mired, oxen strained. Men cursed as frost gnawed beards. Yet still they pushed. At dusk they reached the god's eye, frozen rim shining violet under a sliver moon. Harrenhal's massive ruin loomed across the lake, windows dark voids in a blackened skull. Gendry declared a halt on the shore, the first true camp of the expedition. Tents rose, fires flickered. Gendry walked alone to the lake's edge, hammer slung. Behind him, Brienne followed, Oathkeeper strapped across back. She joined him in silence, watching the reflection of the castle warp on icy water. "I've dreamed of this place," he said, voice low. "My father's ghost might haunt those halls. Perhaps all kings who fall return to Harrenhal." Brienne startled. "Do you fear it?" "Only the burden of their mistakes." He glanced at her. "My crown is not made of swords, just old iron. Yet sometimes it weighs the same." She laid her gauntlet on his forearm. "Then share the weight." They pressed on, threading the King's Road through fields where drifts rose higher than men. Nymeria's spearmen wrapped their faces in bright scarves. Even Brienne's lips cracked. On the 19th day, they reached Maidenpool's sister town Salentown, where they expected wagons of grain to restock. Instead, they found smoldering ash and a message carved by knife into the lintel of the inn. "The Night's King rises." Bodies lay where they had fallen, skin blue-gray and eyes ice-white. Davos's ships had not yet arrived. This massacre was fresh. "White walkers this far south?" Edric whispered, voice choked. "Or someone who wishes us to think so," Nymeria said, towing a corpse whose wounds were ragged and bloody, not frozen clean. "These cuts speak of steel, not glass claws." Gendry knelt. "Then why the eyes?" Brienne cut into a corpse's chest, ignoring the gasps around her. "Paint," she muttered. "Cobalt pigment mixed with resin." It was a message, a threat from human foes. But which? Nymeria studied tracks in snow. A deep narrow will rut, horse hooves small and light, nails square-tipped. She traced it back to where it vanished in the trees. "That's Lannisport iron," Jaime said, having ridden up from the rear to investigate. He swore under breath. "My sister's claws reach long even in storm." Camp that night buzzed with tension. Gendry called council by firelight. Snow hissed in flames. Men's shadows wavered. "We cannot let fear stop us," he declared. "Nor can we leave southern villages to slaughter." He split the host. Brienne, Edric, and Nymeria would lead 300 in the grain wagons onward to White Harbor. Gendry and Jaime, with 100 hardy volunteers and 20 Dornish outriders, would cut east to chase the killers. Davos's coastal fleet would sail upriver to meet whichever group emerged north first. Jaime eyed Brienne. "Keep my swords better half safe." She nodded, and they clasped wrists. Snowflakes clung to golden stump and steel gauntlet alike. The hunters traced will ruts through willow groves to a half-collapsed sept dedicated to the maiden, now draped with lion banners stiff with frost. Inside they found a dozen Lannister men feasting on stolen grain, warming boots by altar flames. Their captain wore crimson cloak sewn with braids of blonde hair, a trophy culled from the dead women of Salentown. Gendry strode into the ruin, hammer gleaming. Jaime walked beside him, face carved from stone. "Put down your flag," Jaime ordered. The captain stood, smirking. "Ser Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer turned Hammer's dog. My orders come from blood purer than yours. We hunt false kings." He drew steel. The hammer replied, crushing sword arm in one blow before it cleared scabbard. Jaime finished 2 more with left-hand dagger. Volunteers rounded up the rest, binding wrists with rope. Gendry pressed the hammer's face to the captain's cheek until flesh blistered. "You carved children's eyes blue," he growled. "Tell the Queen Fire cannot freeze the north." At dawn they marched prisoners back toward Harrenhal, where a contingent of Blackfish Tully scouts, recently allied, took custody. Letters were penned to prove Cersei's hand in the massacre. Meanwhile, Brienne's column pushed through snow so heavy it swirled like banners around torchlight. At the neck, Where bog and frost merged, they met unexpected allies. Crannogmen led by Howland Reed himself, frog spears swapped for obsidian-tipped arrows. The small lord bowed to Gendry's queenless hammer banner. "My son Jojen saw fire in the snow," he rasped. "We come at the dream's call." He offered reed boats to ferry wagons across frozen causeways where horses would falter. Nymeria saluted with spear-haft-clacking shield. With reed guidance, they reached the banks of the White Knife as Davos's ships crept upriver through needle-sized ice floes. On the opposite shore, beacon fires of White Harbor flickered. Lord Wyman Manderley himself hobbled down the quay, cloaked in bearskin and grease-splattered apron smelling of lamprey pie. He embraced Brienne, acclaimed Gendry in the same breath, and ordered a feast that night for the entire host. Inside Newcastle's grand hall, tapestries of mermaids wove with hammered roses and freshly sewn hammers. Gendry deferred the high dais to Lord Manderley and instead sat among crannogmen and stable boys, tearing chunks of bread and salted pork, listening to tales of far north terror. Snow Bear, half the size of a hall, felled outside Deepwood Motte, a ranger bringing news of wildling clans joining Jon Snow at Castle Black, and ravens whispering of a trembling wall. At feast's height, the door blasted open. Gust of night, whirl of snow, and a dire wolf padded into the hall, white as moonlit chalk, eyes burning blue-green. Gasps rippled. Behind it strode a figure clad in black and gray furs, sword hilt of Valyrian steel rising above shoulder. Jon Snow. He crossed the hall purposefully. The dire wolf, ghost, brushed tables, sniffed Gendry's hammer, then settled by the hearth like an old statue. Jon reached the high table but bowed first to the hammers. "My thanks," he said, voice low and rasped by cold. "You bring what we need most." Gendry rose, clasped Jon's forearm. "Dragonglass and bread. But I'm told even dragons may starve without hope." Jon's half-smile was bleak. "Hope is in shy supply beyond the wall, but the fire in your forge burns bright enough to be seen from there." Brienne placed a heavy velvet bag upon the table, spilling freshly carved dragonglass arrowheads, black shards glittering purple. Nymeria followed with 2 spear points shaped like serpent fangs. Edric produced a dagger for Jon, its hilt bound in green silk, the blade curved like a frozen flame. With alliances sealed in bread and black glass, they planned. Supply caravans carried over the King's Road by reed marsh sleds, galleys loaded with obsidian ferried from Dragonstone to Eastwatch, and Dorne spearmen deployed within Winterfell's courtyards where their warm-blooded bodies might stave off cold. Meanwhile, Jon reported wisps of blue fire within the haunted forest, strange towers of ice rising overnight. The walkers were building something, though no ranger had yet seen more than glimpses. Days later, Gendry's host, now swelled by Manderley knights, umbers with enormous shaggy horses, and free folk archers with paint marking their cheeks, marched north again. Snow blinded, wind howled. Jon and Ghost led the vanguard, Brienne close behind, Nymeria flanking with Dorne's light foot. Their footprints vanished in moments, but their will burned fierce. Back in King's Landing, Arya learned of their progress by Raven. Secret channel through Maester Tybald's apprentice, she'd persuaded with the promise of her own stories if he kept silent. She spent nights sabotaging Qyburn's attempts to retake maimed prisoners from the city's ashes. One moonless evening, she slipped into the Tower of the Hand, where Qyburn fretted over maps. Needle found his throat fast, but killing him might trigger more havoc. Instead, she stole a sheaf of parchments detailing last wildfire caches hidden beneath the dragon pit. When she departed, she left behind a carved wooden wolf with a blue eye, warning enough. Cersei's rage reached new heights when she discovered the theft. She blamed Kevin, cast him into a cell, then appointed a new hand, Lord Tarly of Horn Hill, whose discipline made soldiers shudder. Tarly summoned an army of Reach crossbowmen to garrison the Red Keep, but he required forage. His scouts seized grain wagons bound for the north. Hunger again loomed. Jaime confronted Tarly in the keep's courtyard. "You threaten the charter," he warned. "The people will rise." Tarly brushed snow from breastplate. "Let them. A realm is not governed by porridge." At that moment, Arya's stolen parchments reached Jaime via Sparrow courier. Reading them, his face drained. He sought Cersei that night in her solarium, where wildfire torches flickered. "End this," he begged. "Release Kevin. Return grain. Destroy caches." She laughed. "The city is my son. I will not let bastards and beggars feed him poison." She sipped arbor gold laced with dream wine. Jaime realized she was drifting toward madness deeper than before. He left the room shaking, his world splitting. In the corridor, Brienne's absence weighed. He whispered her name as if she might appear to steady him. Instead, he found Podrick Payne, back from northern camp with letter for him. Brienne's script: "We stand at Moat Cailin. White shadows press. Come north if you can." Jaime made his choice that moment. He gathered the Queensguard, who still followed conscience, freed Kevin, and together they commandeered a grain galley waiting at the quay. In blinding snowfall, they slipped from the harbor under cover of fog, heading for White Harbor. Moat Cailin, once unassailable, now little more than a ruin perched in a sea of black ice, shuddered under new threat. Beyond the bog, pale forms drifted, thin ranks at first, then legions, each white carrying shard of ice as weapon or torch. Behind them stalked tall figures in armor of rime, eyes blue lanterns. Gendry's forces reached the outer ramparts as night fell. Snow squeaked under iron-shod feet. Davos's fleet anchored at nearby lake, unloading dragonglass crates. The sky glowed eerie green with aurora, a shimmering veil that flickered above like tattered banners of dead kingdoms. Jon Snow strode atop the wall, scanning the endless dark. "They'll attack when the moon sets," he murmured to Gendry. "Then we make welcome," the Smith King answered. He touched the cold haft of his hammer. "Steel might shatter ice, but faith will swing the blow." Brienne stood at his left, Oathkeeper catching starlight. Nymeria at his right, spear ready. The host formed ranks. Manderly men with tall kite shields shimmering like silver fish scales. Sunspear spears forming a razor hedgerow. Crannogman archers crouched atop the berm, casting obsidian-tipped shafts into braziers to ignite pitch-soaked flights. When the first white shriek split the windless cold, Ghost answered with a howl. The battle began. Arrows whistled, obsidian exploding on contact, turning revenants to dust. But for each fallen, 5 more advanced. Ice spiders the size of ponies clambered over the bog's hardened crust, black eyes like pits of night. Jon hacked one's leg. Brienne hacked another, her breath steaming. On the causeway, Gendry's hammer crushed skulls and ribs, each strike sending blue sparks. Edric loosed arrow after arrow. Nymeria danced past a walker, spear slicing its knee joint, Edric's next shaft nailing its neck. It burst in sheeting frost. A horn blew thrice, Jaime's horn. From the south, he and Kevin arrived with crossbowmen bearing grain sacks that concealed casks of oil. They rolled casks down slope, Davos's torch set them ablaze, and where flame touched ice, whites recoiled. But walkers regrouped, forming wedge to pierce the main gate. And at its point strode a figure taller than the rest, crown of icicles fused to skull. Jon recognized him from Bran's visions. The Night King's chosen general, perhaps the Night King himself. He raised a spear of crystal, and the temperature dropped so swiftly frost exploded from every stone. Ghost leapt. The spear caught him mid-air, pinning the direwolf against rampart. A cry tore from Jon. He charged, Longclaw blazing blue as it met spear. The clash sent shards of crystal into sky. Brienne moved to aid, but whites flooded between. Gendry saw, felt hammer pulse. He shouted for Brienne to hold the southern breach and barreled through the melee toward Jon. Ice shattered under hammer strokes. He drew close enough to glimpse Ghost's limp form, spear transfixing shoulder. Jon struggled against the tall walker, sparks flying. The walker raised free hand to hurl a storm of ice shards. Gendry hurled his hammer instead. It sailed end over end, glowing red from friction, and smashed the walker's arm to splinters. Jon's next blow cleaved the figure in two. Freezing wind whooshed as it died. The spear melted to puddle, freeing Ghost, who yelped and slunk behind Jon. The remaining whites staggered as if strings cut. Their eyes flickered, then extinguished. They fell like felled wheat. Silence followed, broken only by crackle of ice settling. The host, battered, stood gasping. Gendry retrieved hammer, shaft rimed with frost. Snowflakes drifted again, soft as ash. Jon clasped his forearm. "I owe you." "You owe the small folk," Gendry replied, wiping sweat from frozen brow. "They forged this hammer." He lifted it. "They forged this king, if I am one." The victory held, but scouts soon reported more armies of ice approaching from the east and west. A respite, not an end. Night deepened. They burned their dead, men and whites alike, in pyres that turned the sky orange and purple. Sparks rose into the aurora, like prayers. Jon convened war council in the castle's broken great hall. Maps covered with frost were spread. "The wall won't last," he said. "We need to meet them in the field, not cower behind stones that crumble." Jaime suckled raw fingers near brazier. "Then we gather every banner, reach Riverland's Vale. Even the Ironborn, they hate ice more than fire." Nymeria's brows arched. "And what of Dorne?" Gendry fixed her with steady gaze. "Dorne rides with us until the sun itself freezes, and even then we march forward." Brienne placed her gauntlet on the map. "We defend Winterfell. It is the heart. Lose it, and the body dies." Edric Storm pointed at the winding blue river of the White Knife. "If we dam the river, flood the field before Winterfell, we create a moat of slush the whites can't cross easily." Jon nodded. "And we line banks with dragonglass pikes. It might buy us days." Davos scribbled lists. "Lumber, axes, saws. I'll sail barges down to cut ice floes," he said. They agreed. Families of small folk evacuated south. Knights formed outrider lines. Maesters set ravens aflutter. Arya's stolen wildfire maps found path north with Jaime, hidden in saucer of stew. She remained in King's Landing, now spearheading clandestine networks smuggling grain and glass to the front. Undercover, she discovered a new threat. Qyburn had fled south to Old Town Citadel, bargaining secrets for excommunication from Cersei's madness. She hunted his trail, crossing names as she went. In King's Landing itself, Cersei's rule teetered. Bread lines grew again as grain sailed north. Gold cloaks muttered. Tarly's crossbowmen eyed the walls they garrisoned with suspicion. High Sparrow's sermons turned sharper. When the hour of final darkness falls, even kings must kneel. Tommen slipped out nightly to feed stray cats and hear small folks' fears, his sympathy blossoming into secret rebellion against his mother's edicts. One night, Tommen snuck to the September and found Arya waiting in shadows. She handed him a letter written by Brienne describing the battle at Moat Cailin and pleading for his support. Tommen's eyes brimmed. He swore to open granaries. Arya guided him through hidden tunnel to the Guildmint where keys lay guarded by one drunk clerk. Tommen borrowed 2 wagons, loaded them with silver stags, and sent them north via Sparrow caravan disguised as pilgrims. The boy king returned before dawn, none the wiser except the mask of exhaustion he wore at breakfast. Cersei noticed, of course. She confronted him, but Tommen stood straighter than ever. "A king feeds his people," he declared, "and his soldiers." When she slapped him, he did not cry. Instead, he stared at her with eyes that reminded her of Robert, stubborn and thunderous. She froze, suddenly seeing that her power had slipped like sand through clenched fists. That same afternoon, a roar shook the Red Keep. Wildfire caches beneath the dragon pit erupted. Sabotage or accident? No one knew. Green flames spouted, but thanks to Arya's doctored wicks, they consumed only old stone and the dragon bones still chained there, leaving the city proper untouched. Cersei's last weapon lay smoking ruin, and small folk muttered behind closed shutters that the gods themselves had spared them. Jaime returned to the capital briefly to take Tommen and Kevan north under escort, leaving Cersei to face the tide of her own making. She paced the empty throne room, wildfire eyes reflecting in black marble, but few still listened. Winterfell's towers reared ahead, flags of Stark direwolf snapping in whipping gale. Inside, Sansa Stark greeted Brienne and Nymeria with measured grace, Edric with friendly kiss on cheek, Gendry with sisterly nod, and Jon with silent relief. She led them to Godswood, where the heart tree glowed red against snow. Bran waited there, pale and strange, his eyes clouded with visions. "You come at the pivot," he said with echo not entirely his own. "Ice will break upon hammer and wolf, but only if fire shapes the blow." He lifted hand. A single red leaf drifted from branch, alighting on Brienne's pauldron. "Valyrian steel and dragonglass are not enough. You'll need dragon fire." Nymeria rolled shoulders. "Daenerys is dead in Essos, last I heard. No dragons in this sky." Bran's eyes glazed. "There is still one egg. Not in Essos, but buried where rivers meet, sleeping beneath stone older than men." His gaze locked on Gendry. "The anvil must break the shell." Later that night, over hearth in Great Hall, Bran explained. Old records and crypts hinted at a dragon's egg gifted to Torrhen Stark when he bent the knee to Aegon but never hatched. It was said to be sealed in an ironwood box, lost when crypt polars collapsed 2 centuries past. Gendry agreed to delve with Nymeria and Brienne. They descended ancient stairs beneath Winterfell, torches sputtering, breath misting. Bones of kings lined alcoves, eye sockets staring. At last they reached a sealed door bound with rusted chains.
Gendry's hammer shattered lock, doorground.
Inside, among debris of fallen stone, they found an ironwood casket. They carried it up, pried lid open before Jon and Sansa. Within nestled an egg the size of Gendry's helm, scales midnight blue shot with gold flecks, pulsed faint warmth. "How do we hatch it?" Sansa whispered. Bran's voice drifted. "With heat and blood, an offering of life willing to fuse with flame." Silence fell. Brienne's hand found hilt of Oathkeeper. "Life enough has been given," she said. "We cannot demand more." Gendry touched the egg, feeling faint heartbeat. Memories flashed. Forge heat, molten metal, the cheers of small folk fed for the first time, the direwolf child who saved him in Flea Bottom. "Perhaps not life lost," he murmured. "Life transformed." He looked to Sansa. "Do you still keep glass candles?" Sansa frowned but retrieved the tall green cylinder Bran had used in his studies. Gendry placed egg in brazier of coals, then poured oil around. He cut his palm, letting blood drip onto blue shell. Jon followed suit, then Brienne, Nymeria, Edric. Their blood sizzled, smoking. Bran chanted words of old tongue. Snow outside walls howled. Flames rose, licking shell. A crack sounded, faint but sure. Shell parted. A shape emerged, small but bright. Dragon with wings of midnight and eyes of gold. It shrieked, inhaled, and spat a burst of fire that flared blue-white. The hall gasped. Sansa stepped forward, fearless. The dragon hissed but did not burn her. Bran smiled. Dragons choose or are chosen. Winterfell knows its queen. Gendry bowed his head. A hammer forged the shell, but a wolf bears the flame. The room trembled with possibility. They named the dragon Morningstar, for it rose in darkest hour. Bran taught Sansa to feed it slivers of charred meat. Within days it doubled in size, wings strong enough to lift above battlements. Its fire melted trenches Jon carved into fields, creating moats of glassed earth. White walkers approaching Winterfell met walls of flame, blue meeting gold, and recoiled. Yet the war was not won. Reports reached them of a second front. Walkers skirting Frostfangs toward the neck, aiming to cut south behind them. Gendry realized Cersei's captured lion banners could now hamper them. If southern lords held back supply, Winterfell might starve. And even a dragon needed time to grow. He convened final council. "We hold Winterfell with Morningstar and Moat. Jaime will ride south to rally Crownlands. Nymeria and Edric lead Dorne and Stormlanders to guard the neck. Brienne stays with Jon and Sansa. I return to King's Landing to confront Queen Regent, alone if need be." Protests rang, but he lifted hammer. "Peace forged once can be reforged." Bran's eyes clouded. "Your path ends where it began, in fire beneath Dragon Pit ruins. But whether you fall or stand matters not to prophecy. Only what you choose." Gendry smiled sadly. "Prophecy is just another chain. A smith knows chains can break." He embraced Jon, clasped Brienne's gauntlet, grinned at Nymeria's threat of ripping skirts if he died, and rode south through snow with a small retinue. Podrick, Sister Yanna, Ardrick, and 6 Kranich scouts. They reached King's Landing as the city shivered under blizzard clouds, the Blackwater a river of slush. Wildfire smoke still tainted air from Dragon Pit blast. The gates, manned by Tarly's half-frozen crossbowmen, opened only after seeing Hammer Banner. Inside, small folk flocked, telling of plague laughter when Cersei ordered minstrel hung for singing the Hammer King's hymn. Bread had grown scarce. Gold cloaks under Ardrick's reforms had deserted or defected. Sparrow sermons outdrew the Queen's proclamations. Gendry marched straight to Maegor's holdfast. In the throne room, Cersei sat draped in black furs, goblet clutched. Qyburn stood at her side again, returned from Old Town with new, darker secrets. "Bastard king," she spat, eyes glassy. "Come to collect my head?" "I came to end hunger," he replied. "Grant grain, release hostages, aid the North. Do that, and you keep title by Tommen's grace." She laughed cracked glass. "Grain? My brother steals ships. My son betrays me, and you think I'll feed traitors? You already burn your throne's foundation. With walkers at our door, can you eat crowns? Can hauntings wear jewels?" He stepped closer. "Every war ends at a table. Seat." She rose, staggering. "I'll end war with this." She hurled crystal vial at him. Smoke-black potion. He ducked. The vial smashed floor, hissed poisonous vapor. Podrick flung cloak over it. Qyburn hurled dagger. Ardrick blocked. Sister Yanna rushed forward, herbs ready, only to receive Qyburn's second knife in shoulder. Gendry's hammer swung, catching Qyburn in ribs. Bones snapped. The maester crumpled, gasping. Cersei drew dagger of her own, but Gendry did not raise hammer. He looked into her eyes, once bright, now pits of grief and madness. "Please," he said softly, "your son needs a mother, not a monster." Something flickered, remorse, then vanished. She lunged, blade aimed at his heart. Podrick's sword intersected. Dagger clanged off steel. Gold cloaks stormed in, torn between orders and conscience. Ardrick shouted for them to stand down. They hesitated. Cersei screamed, "Kill them! Kill the bastard!" No one moved. She spun, raced to throne dais, seized wildfire torch from bracket. "If I cannot rule, none shall." She smashed torch to floor. Flames whooshed, licking tapestries. Podrick doused cloak, but fire spread to drapes. Gendry mounted dais. Cersei brandished torch like a sword, hair wild, tears cutting soot on cheeks. He approached slowly, hammer lowered. "I forgave men who killed children," he said gently. "I forgave those who starved women. The gods can forgive you." Her lips trembled. "The gods? They took my father, my firstborn, my daughter, my honor. So take back mercy," he whispered, extending hand. She faltered. Torch dipped. Tears fell onto flame, hissing. She let it slip. Podrick stomped flame. Silence. Outside, bells tolled again, trembling, but hopeful. High Sparrow entered, leading Tommen, who rushed to his mother, hugging her knees. She collapsed, sobbing. Gendry stepped back, letting small hands give forgiveness no sermon could. Later, in Solar, where air still smelled of singed velvet, Cersei signed a court of winter provisioning. Grain to north, troops to neck, ravens of support. Qyburn lay bound in cell, moaning. Tarly resigned, returning to Horn Hill. Kevan restored as hand, with Marjorie and Sparrow overseeing bread lines. Gendry visited Sister Yanna, dagger wound shallow. She smiled wryly. "Queens make poor surgeons." He squeezed her hand. Night blanketed city. Gendry climbed the remains of Dragon Pit, now crater open to starlight. He planted hammer upright in cracked stone, watching sparks of forge workers nearby rebuilding stables. Arya appeared from shadows. "You didn't kill her," she said. "Some chains break better without blood." Arya touched list parchment, now nearly blank. "Maybe one day I'll burn mine too." She smirked. But not tonight. They watched dawn's first blush creep across horizon. Ravens launched northward carrying news. Peace hammered, grain rolling, queen humbled. In Winterfell, Sansa's dragons stretched wings under sunrise glow, fire warming ramparts. Jon raised sword to coming armies of ice, hope rekindling. The war for Dawn was far from over. But unity forged by hammer, wolf, lion, rose, spear, and onion gave the realm its first true chance. Gendry turned to Arya. Ready for the north? She grinned feral. Needles thirsty for true monsters. He lifted hammer, freshly tempered. Together they descended the broken stair, heading for stables where horses pawed snow, breath like smoke. Companions in a realm where winter had met its match in men and women who could still choose mercy over ruin. Snowflakes swirled, each a tiny, fleeting star falling into a world now brightened by sparks of hope. And somewhere behind them, the hammer stood silent sentinel over shattered stone. Proof that the mightiest change in Westeros had not come from dragons or swords, but from a smith who believed that iron, once broken, could be reforged into something stronger than any crown.